at 2 in the morning, in the autumn of 1860. There is no doctor in this town. There is no hospital within 100 miles of it. There is no telegraph wire, no druggist counter, no bell to ring that summons anyone at all. There is a boy of 8 burning with fever under a quilt his grandmother sewed in Ohio, and a mother wringing a cloth in a basin of well water, and a father standing out in the wagon road with his hat in his hands, looking at the darkest sky you have ever seen. And there is one lamp, set close against the window glass, burning. That lamp is not for the family. The family knows their trouble already. The lamp is for the town, because out here, a light kept burning through the small hours, says what a church bell says in older places. Somebody is sick tonight. Somebody is awake with them. Come if you can. Before this night is over, a neighbor will saddle a horse by lantern light and ride out alone into 42 miles of dark grass, carrying a folded note with 4 words in it. And the whole town will begin doing the thing that little towns on the American frontier did better than anyone ever gave them credit for. They will doctor themselves. Friends, welcome back. Tonight we are going out to the far edge of settled country, to a town too small and too far for any physician to call home. And we are going to live a week there. Dim the lights and get comfortable. If these journeys help you rest, a like or a subscribe truly helps. And tell me in the comments where you are listening from tonight. Now, to meet this town properly, we should arrive the way strangers always arrived, at dusk, by the West Road, 3 days before the fever came. You come over the last low rise at the end of an afternoon in late September, and there it is below you, laid out along a shallow creek, the color of weak coffee, the whole of it visible in one look. 30 chimneys, maybe a few more, counting the dugouts on the far bank, a wide dirt street running parallel to the water, wagon ruts worn into it deep enough to hold yesterday's rain, a general store with a real glass window, a blacksmith shop with its big doors standing open to the evening, a church built of cottonwood lumber, whitewashed once and meaning to be whitewashed again, with a small empty tower where a bell will hang someday, when a bell can be afforded, and when a bell can be freighted out here without cracking. They call the place Cedar Ford, and you say the name to yourself as you walk your tired horse down the rise, because it is going to be your town now, and a man likes to get the name right. This is Kansas territory, 1860. Behind you, back east. The country is loud. The newspapers are full of argument. The election is coming like weather, and men who have never seen each other are learning to hate each other by mail. Out here, the argument thins with the air. Out here, the questions are older and simpler. Will the well hold? Will the winter be early? Will the child's cough pass? You ride in past the first houses, and the town takes your measure the way small towns do, without seeming to look at all. A woman gathering the last of her wash glances once and goes back to her line. 2 children stop rolling a barrel hoop long enough to watch your horse, which interests them more than you do. Somewhere behind the houses, a cow is complaining about the lateness of her milking, and the sound of it, that plain barnyard sound, reaches something in your chest. because you have been alone on the road a long while. And a complaining cow means people, and supper, and walls. The store is the first door you try, because the store is always the first door. Painted above it in letters that were done carefully by an amateur. It says A. Finch. Dry goods. Groceries. Post office. Inside. The smell is the smell of every good store on the frontier, and it is worth stopping to breathe. Coffee beans and new rope, vinegar and calico, kerosene, molasses, leather, and underneath everything, the sweet, dusty smell of cracker barrels and plank floors. A man behind the counter is weighing out sugar for a woman with a Germany sound in her voice, and he nods you toward the stove corner without breaking his count. That is Amos Finch. His wife Delia is at the letter desk, sorting a canvas sack of mail that came in on the freight wagon. And the little crowd of folks waiting for their names to be called tells you it is mail day, which explains why the store is full at supper time. You wait your turn and listen, and the store teaches you the town. You learn there is a shelf behind the counter, up high, where the medicines live. Bottles with wax seals and printed labels, liniments and bitters and syrups. A tin of pills from St. Louis. You watch a farmer ask the price of one of those bottles, turn it in his hand while he thinks, and set it back on the counter gently, the way a man sets down something he wanted. 2 days of wages for one bottle. He buys camphor instead, a smaller bottle, and a paper of pins for his wife, and goes out. You learn that the nearest railroad is a hard week east, that the stage road runs south of here, and that the army has a post up to the northwest, a place folks call the fort, though when they say it, they wave their hands at the horizon, the way people gesture at things that are real but far. And you learn, standing by that stove with your hat in your hands, the one fact that this whole story turns on, though tonight it is just talk among neighbors on mail day. There is no doctor in Cedar Ford. There has never been one. The woman with the German voice asks Delia Finch whether the new family on the creek has any medical man among them. Hopeful, the way you would ask about rain. Delia says no. They are farming people. Good stock. But no. And nobody in the store sighs or shakes their head over it. It is not news. It is the shape of the country they live in. And they wear it the way they wear the wind. You take a room for the night at the widow's house that boards travelers, and you step out once after supper just to look at the place you have come to. The street is empty. The creek is talking quietly to itself down below the ford. Lamplight stands in a few windows, going out one by one as the town finishes its day, until the dark wins the whole street, except for one late window down at the store, where Delia Finch is finishing the mail by lamplight, and the widow, locking up behind you, follows your look down the street and tells you the first true thing anyone tells you in Cedar Ford. In a town this size, she says, a lamp burning late always means something. Mild, or sickness, or a baby coming. You learn to read the windows out here, same as sailors read the sky. Then she says, good night, and you go up to bed in a town of 30 chimneys, asleep on the open prairie under about 10,000 stars, 3 days before the fever. Thomas Weaver is up before the sun on the last ordinary morning, because that is when farmers get up, and this is the morning we should walk beside him, while ordinary still holds. You are Thomas now. Feel the cold floor through your socks, and hear the house around you doing its first sounds of the day. Mary is at the stove already, coaxing the fire. In the loft overhead there are two children sleeping. Ellie, who is 8, and Susan, who is 6. And one of them, the boy, said a strange small thing last night at supper. He said his head hurt behind his eyes, and he did not finish his cornbread. And Eli finishing his cornbread is as regular as the sun. You stand a moment at the foot of the loft ladder, listening to him breathe. The breathing is fine. Children complain of 100 things, and 99 of them are gone by morning. You put your hat on and go out to the field, because the plowing will not wait, and worry is a poor hand at a plow anyway. The Weaver Quarters section lies west of town, good bottom ground along the creek, and this morning the air is so clear you can see the whole world from behind the team. You can see the smoke standing up straight from 30 chimneys. You can see the Finch store catching the first sun in its glass window, the only window glass for a day's ride in any direction. And you can see the road. Look at that road a while, the way Thomas does when the team rests at the end of a furrow. It leaves the far end of the street and runs northwest. 2 wagon tracks and a strip of grass between them, rising and falling over the swells of the prairie until it thins to a thread, and the thread goes over the edge of the sky. 42 miles out along that thread, there is a fort, cavalry, a parade ground, stable, and the thing that matters, a post surgeon, an army doctor, trained back east, with a hospital room of real beds and a locked chest of real medicines. Government issue, ordered by the case. Folks in Cedar Ford speak of the fort's surgeon the way villagers in old countries spoke of a shrine on a far mountain. Everyone knows it is there. Almost no one has been. The army doctors will see settlers sometimes. If the trouble is bad, and the surgeon is willing, and the duty allows, and every soul on this prairie knows a story about a man who was hauled to the fort in a wagon bed and saved. They also know stories that end otherwise, and those get told quieter. South of here, a longer ride. The stage road crosses the country. Swing stations every dozen miles. And somewhere along it, a traveling doctor works the line. A saddlebag physician who stitches drivers and sets the bones of station men and takes his pay in ham and oats, where he might be on any given day. Nobody in Cedar Ford could tell you. A moving man is hard to send for, and that is the whole medical map of your world. Thomas Weaver, one surgeon, 42 miles northwest, who belongs to the army and not to you. One traveling doctor, somewhere south, who belongs to the road. And in between, a town of 30 chimneys that belongs to itself. Here is the arithmetic that every settler on this prairie carries in the back of his mind and takes out only when he must. A galloping horse cannot gallop 42 miles. A horse ridden hard and rested smart can make the fort in most of a day. If the weather holds and the horse holds and nothing goes wrong in the dark, then whatever help there is must come back over the same 42 miles. Call it 2 days. door to door, with luck leaning on you the whole way. 2 days. Now set that number beside the other numbers a farmer knows. A bad cut can go to blood poisoning in 2 days. A fever in a child can climb to its crisis in 2 days. A woman in a hard labor does not have 2 days. And everybody who has ever kept livestock, which is everybody here, understands that much about birth without a single day of schooling. So distance is not just a hardship out here. Distance is part of every disease. The same cut heals or kills, depending on how many miles lie between the axe and the needle. The same fever is a story a family tells at Christmas, or a stone on the hill behind the church. And the difference can be nothing more than where on the map the child happened to be sleeping when it started. Back east, they measure sickness in symptoms. Out here, they measure it in miles first. And the miles do not care. Thomas plows to the end of the field and back. And the morning does what Kansas mornings do. Turns gold and wide and almost merry. Meadowlarks going up out of the grass, ahead of the team. At noon, Mary sends Susan out with cornbread and cold bacon, and the child stays to ride the plow horse home for water. And everything is so deeply usual that you would swear the day itself was healthy. Only at supper does the small wrong note sound again. Eli comes to the table when he is called, which is not like him. He is a boy who comes at a run or not at all. He eats a little. He says his head still hurts. And now his neck is stiff besides. Likely from sleeping crooked, says Mary. And she says it in the plain voice mothers use. But you see her hand rest on the back of his neck a moment longer than checking for crooked sleep requires. That night, Thomas steps out on the porch, the way he always does, last thing, to smell the weather. The town is dark down the creek, every window out. 30 chimneys under the enormous sky. Northwest, the fort road runs away, pale in the starlight, until the dark takes it. The road to the fort lay empty in the evening light. And it looked, Thomas would think later, the way a rope looks coiled by the door, a thing you keep and hope not to need, and mostly never think about at all, until the night your hand reaches for it. Inside, behind him, Mary turned the lamp down low, but she did not blow it out. The fever declares itself a little after midnight, the way fevers like to, in the hours when the house is coldest and help feels farthest away. You are Mary Weaver now, and you wake without knowing why, the way mothers do. Some instrument in you registering a change in the house before your ears can name it. Then you name it. It is Ellie, up in the loft, talking, not calling for anyone, just talking, low and fast and wrong, a conversation with nobody, in a voice that has sand in it. You are up the ladder with a candle before Thomas is fully awake below. And when the light falls on your son, you feel your own heart change its stride. He is soaked. His hair is dark with sweat and stuck to his forehead, and the quilt is thrown off. And when you touch his chest, the heat comes up through his nightshirt into your palm like the heat off a stove lid with the fire banked behind it. His eyes are open and they find you, and he knows you. Thank God. He says, Mama, but he says it from a distance, as if he were speaking from across the creek. There is a kind of stillness that comes over a capable woman at such a moment. And you feel it come over you now. The fear arrives, and you set it a chair in the corner of your mind and tell it to wait there. Because there is work. Water first. You send Thomas down for the basin and the good soft cloth, and you strip the boy to his skin and begin sponging him, wrists and neck and chest, the way your own mother did it, the way her mother did it. The whole female line of your family, standing invisibly behind you in that loft with their sleeves rolled. Eli shivers and complains and tries to burrow away from the cloth, and that fussing steadies you a little, because a child with fight in him is a child with far to fall. But he is hot. He is hotter than any of the winter fevers you have nursed him through. And there is the neck. When you cup the back of his head to lift him for water, he cries out and goes rigid. And it is not the cry of a stiff muscle. Something about bending forward hurts him deep. And a small cold bell rings somewhere in you at that, though you could not say what it means, and neither, if we are honest, could anyone else in Kansas territory tonight. So you go to the box. It lives beneath the big bed downstairs, a wooden chest the size of a cradle. And while Thomas sits with the boy, you kneel on the plank floor and drag it out and open it by candlelight. And here, friend, we should slow down and look over Mary's shoulder, because what lies in this box is the whole front line of medicine on the American frontier. And every family within 500 miles has a box like it. And every box is a story of where that family has been. On top, folded clean, the bandage linen, an old sheet, boiled and torn into strips and rolled, because store cloth costs money, but a worn sheet is free. And this particular sheet came west in the wagon 4 years ago and was slept on for a decade before that. If you unrolled it far enough, you would find the embroidered initials of Mary's grandmother beneath the linen, the herbs, each in its paper or its muslin sack, labeled in Mary's own hand, bone set for sweating out a chill, horehound for coughs, peppermint for a soured stomach, and the one her fingers go to now, willow bark, dry curls of it, gathered from the creek here in Kansas, but learned long ago on another creek in Ohio, where her mother showed her which tree and how to peel the young shoots in spring, and how to boil the bitterness into a tea that gentles a fever. Nobody in this year of 1860 can tell you why willow bark eases fever and aching. That answer belongs to chemists not yet born. The frontier only knows that it does. Mother to daughter, back and back. A fact worn smooth by use like the handle of a good tool. Then the bottles, camphor, sharp and clean smelling, for rubbing on a congested chest. A vial of peppermint oil, a blue glass bottle of castor oil that every child in this family regards as the true enemy. And down in the corner, wrapped in flannel so it cannot break, the little bottle Mary hesitates over. Tonight and every night it is needed. Laudanum, tincture of opium, bought across a counter in Independence, Missouri, the week before the family rolled west. No prescription, no question. $1.50 and a nod. The druggist there said it was good for pain, for flux, for cholera, for sleeplessness. for a Kolitsky baby, and he was not lying. Exactly. It quiets all those things. It quiets nearly anything. That is its gift and its danger both. And the label says nothing about how much is too much for a boy of 8. Because in 1860, no label in America has to say any such thing. Mary has seen this bottle work small mercies. She has also heard, every woman has, the stories from the wagon trains of worn-out mothers dosing crying children on the trail, and of some children who were dosed to sleep and did not wake, and nobody ever able to say quite where the line had been. Her hand weighs the bottle a moment. Sleep would be a mercy. The boy is wearing himself down with tossing. And here is the first true decision of this story, made the way most frontier medicine was made, by a woman kneeling at a wooden box in the middle of the night with a candle and her own judgment and nothing else. She thinks, he is hot, and laudanum will not cool him, only hide him from me. She thinks, I want to see where this fever goes, and I cannot see him. If he is down a dark well of sleep, she puts the flannel back around the bottle, and she takes the willow bark and the honey crock instead. And if you have ever wondered what medical wisdom looked like out beyond the reach of doctors, it looked exactly like that. Not knowledge, judgment. A choosing between imperfect things by lamplight. The last thing in the box is a book, and she carries it up to the loft with the tea. It is a thick, square, water-stained volume, and its spine says, Guns, Domestic Medicine. And there may be no more important object in this entire chapter. Dr. John Gunn wrote it for exactly this house, for families beyond the reach of physicians. And it went west in more wagons than any book in America except the Bible. It sits on the shelf in thousands of cabins tonight, and it is consulted the way Scripture is consulted. In trouble, by candlelight, with a finger moving under the lines, while the tea steeps. Mary reads. The chapter on fevers runs a dozen pages, and it is calm and kindly and practical. Cool drinks, light covers, patience, and she takes what steadies her and passes over what does not, the way readers of that book always did. It does not tell her what her son has. It could not. The wisest man in the country could not, standing at this bedside tonight, because the fevers of this age have not yet been pulled apart and named and pinned each to its own cause. That work belongs to the future. In 1860, a fever is a country without a map, and every family enters it on foot. Eli drinks half a cup of the willow tea, bitter under the honey, complaining at it, which is good. Toward 3, he stops his muttering and sleeps. A real sleep, and his skin under her hand, though still hot, has lost that stove-lid fierceness. The fever has stepped back, not left, stepped back. Mary does not go back to bed. She settles into the rocker with the quilt around her shoulders, where she can hear the loft, and Thomas, coming down, does the other necessary thing. He fills the lamp, trims the wick, sets it on the sill of the front window, and lights it, and turns it up full. Anyone waking in the night in Cedar Ford will see it and understand. Sickness at the Weaver place. Watching being done. The lamp burned in the window. In Cedar Ford. That was how a town spoke to itself in the dark. and the town, though it slept, would hear. The knock comes to Ruth Cole's door a little before first light, and she is awake before the second rap, because she has been sleeping on the near edge of sleep for 40 years, the way a ferryman sleeps, with an ear for the far bank. You are Ruth now, 63 years old, widowed twice, a shawl going around your shoulders in the dark of a two-room house at the end of the street, and your feet finding boots without a candle, because you know where everything in this house is, the way you know your own teeth. Through the door glass, a shape with a lantern, young Thomas Weaver, hat in hand, and you read the whole message in the fact of him before he says a word. If it were the worst, he would be running. If it were nothing, he would not be here. The boy, he says, fever since midnight. Mary's got willow tea in him, and he is sleeping now. But he cried out when she lifted his head. And his neck, he does not finish. And you do not need him to. You tell him to walk on ahead. You will follow directly. And you close the door and light your own lamp. And now, friend, watch what 40 years of this work looks like. Because there is a ceremony to it, quick and quiet as a woman dressing for church. And every motion has been polished by repetition until it shines. The basket stands by the door, because it always stands by the door, packed, but she does not simply take it. She opens it and walks it with her eyes once, the way a hunter checks a gun he cleaned last night. The rows of boiled linen, the scissors, and the good needle case, muslin sacks, each tied with its own colored thread, so her fingers can find the right herb without reading. Red for boneset, plain for willow, blue for the raspberry leaf, the vinegar bottle, the small crock of goose grease, the flask of whiskey that has never once been drunk from, 2 candles and a tin of matches, because trouble does not always happen in houses that have light to spare. On top she lays what the night has told her to add, dried elder flower for sweating, and a twist of mustard for a plaster if the chest is involved. Then she puts on her bonnet in the dark, out of pure habit, and steps into the street. The town is still asleep, gray in the last of the starlight, but the Weaver lamp is burning down at the west end, small and steady, and the sight of it settles her, the way a known landmark settles a traveler. She has walked toward lamps like that one for most of her life. She walked toward them in Ohio as a girl of 19, carrying her mother's basket before she had earned one of her own. Her mother striding ahead through the dark, saying, "Remember, child, the first medicine is your own 2 feet arriving," and she walked toward them. For a stretch of years, she still turns over in her mind on these gray walks, alongside a Shawnee woman named Sarah Blue Jacket, who lived with her people on the bottomlands 2 miles from the coal farm, and who knew the green world the way Ruth's mother knew the loom. It began over a difficult birth that needed 4 hands, and it grew into a long trading of craft between 2 women who took their work seriously. Sarah showed her which root eased a griping stomach and how to find it by its flower in the dark of the woods. Ruth showed her the white way with a bad burn, and was shown a better one. Neither woman thought of it as anything but sense. Knowledge went where it was needed, basket to basket, the way seed corn goes farm to farm. And a good deal of what is walking down this Kansas street in Ruth Cole's basket this morning came out of that friendship, though there is no diploma anywhere that says so. The Weaver house smells of willow tea and tallow smoke when she comes in, and she takes charge of it the way she takes charge of every sick room, so gently that nobody ever quite notices the moment it happens. Mary rises from the rocker, and Ruth presses her back into it with one hand on her shoulder. "Coffee," she says to Thomas, not because she wants coffee, but because a frightened man given a task is a man cured of half his fright. Then she climbs to the loft and kneels by the boy, and does what passes for an examination in the year 1860. Out here, where there is no instrument in the county but her own senses. She takes his wrist and counts his pulse against the beat of a hymn in her head. Too quick, but even. She lays her ear flat between his shoulder blades and listens to him breathe. And the breath is clear. No rattle, no crackle, and that is one fear set down. She smells his breath, sweetish from the honey. No rot in it. She turns his palm up to the candle and presses the nail beds and watches the color run back. And last she does the thing his mother told her of, slides her hand beneath his head and lifts. Easy. And the boy groans in his sleep and stiffens against her, like a green branch bending, and she lowers him back down slow. And her face in the candlelight does not change at all, which any student of Ruth Cole could tell you means she has found the thing she was looking for and did not want. She sits back on her heels a while, watching him breathe. Some of what she knows the way we know things now, from cause to effect. Most of what she knows she holds the way sailors held the sea, by pattern. 100 fevers have passed under these hands. She has watched them the way a farmer watches weather. And they have kinds, and the kinds have habits. Down in the kitchen, with the ladder creaking under her and Mary's eyes waiting, she says what the pattern says, and not one word more. "I have nursed 100 fevers," she says. "Some break in 3 days. Some are another kind. And we will know by the 3rd night which kind this one is. He is strong. His chest is clear. And his mother had willow tea in him before I was out of my bed, which was right. Now we do the work." Thomas, standing by the stove, asks the question. The man of the house always asks, and his voice is careful with it. Should somebody ride for the fort? And here is Ruth's decision, the second true decision of this story. And she makes it standing in a kitchen with a coffee cup. She never asked for warming her hands. She is quiet a moment, and behind her eyes, 40 years of arithmetic is being done. A rider is a horse, and a boy risked over 42 miles. Twice. A surgeon who may be there or may not, who may come or may not. 2 days at the very best. And this fever will show its whole hand before 2 days are out, one way or the other. Not yet, she says. A rider costs this town a horse and a boy, and we spend them when we must, not when we are frightened. If the 3rd night turns against us, you will be on the road before I finish saying so. Until then, cool water, willow tea, and watching. Fevers hate a patient enemy. She takes the first watch herself, sends Mary to lie down, whether Mary means to sleep or not, and settles into the rocker beside the loft ladder with her knitting. And the house quiets around her, and the gray at the window goes slowly to gold. And this is where we leave them this morning, friend. So look at it a moment before we go. One small house on the edge of the map. One boy asleep, hot but sleeping. One old woman in a rocker below, needles ticking, counting his breaths through the ceiling boards, the way a shepherd counts without looking. And no doctor within 42 miles, and no certainty within 1,000. Someone was awake. That was the whole of medicine. Some nights, on the far edge of the country, and it was not nothing. It has never been nothing. The second morning turns against them a little after breakfast, and it turns quietly. The way bad news moves in a careful house. Eli wakes worse. The fever has climbed back to where it started and gone past it. And now his stomach will not hold. Not the willow tea. Not water. Not the broth Mary spoons in one small sip at a time. And the neck is stiffer. He lies with his head pressed back into the pillow now, finding for himself the one angle that does not hurt. And when Susan is sent up to sit with him a minute, he does not tease her. And Susan comes down the ladder with a face that has learned something no 6-year-old asks to learn. Ruth Cole watches all of it from the foot of the loft and does her sums again. And this time they come out different. She said 3 nights, and she meant it. And any other fever she would hold to it. But 40 years have taught her the difference between a fever that wanders and a fever that travels. And this one is traveling, hour by hour, along a road she has seen before and does not like. She stands there with her hand on the ladder rail for the space of 10 breaths. Then she comes into the kitchen where Thomas is pretending to mend a harness strap, and she says it plain. I was wrong about waiting, she says, and I would rather be wrong loud than wrong quiet. Now we spend the horse. You would think a town needs a meeting to launch a rider 42 miles. It needs 20 minutes. Watch how it happens. Because nothing in this whole story shows you the machinery of a frontier town better than this one morning hour. Thomas has a saddle horse, but the mare worked the plow all yesterday. And a spent horse is a message that never arrives. So the word goes down the street, house to house, in that quicker than telegraph way of small towns. And the answer comes back from the livery barn before the kettle boils. The barn has a rangy buckskin gelding, young and sound and barely broke to patience. And the barn has something else besides. It has Henry Toe. And here, friend, you may step back into a pair of boots you have worn before, because you have been Henry all along. The stranger who rode over the rise at dusk in the first chapter of this story, who took the town's measure from the stove corner of the Finch store. That was Henry Toe, 19 years old, out of a played-out farm in Illinois. Half a year in Cedar Ford, and still the newest man in it. He mucks stalls and mends fence and doctors the odd, lame horse for the livery barn. And he has been for 6 months. That particular kind of lonesome. A young man is in a town where every soul but him is woven into every other. The mates of this story choose him the way the mates of any crew choose, without ceremony, out loud, in front of him. He is the lightest rider in town who is not a child, says the barn owner. Best pair of eyes, too, says someone else. He can tell a hawk from a buzzard against the sun. And then the third reason, which nobody says, and which Henry hears anyway. Standing there in the barn alley, with the buckskin's lead in his hand, every other man his size has a wife, or a mother, or children, or fields half harvested. Henry has a bedroll and a saddle, and wages of $11 a month. He is the one rider this town can send into 42 miles of empty country without tearing a hole in some family's wall. Being spendable is a cold thing to be. Henry stands in that cold a moment, feeling it, and then he does the thing that will make him, by the end of this story, something else entirely. He says, "I will want a second blanket behind the saddle. Nights are coming on sharp, and the cold turns over and becomes something else. Because a town that can spend you is also a town that is trusting you with the life of a boy." And no one had trusted Henry Tull with anything heavier than a manure fork in a year and a half. Now the town packs him, all at once, in an hour, the way the whole village fitted out the ship in the old stories. Gideon Pratt, the blacksmith, a man built like his own anvil, who has said perhaps 40 words to Henry in 6 months, takes the buckskin without being asked, and pulls all 4 shoes and sets new ones, cold shaping them to that horse's own feet. And when Henry reaches for his wages, Gideon looks at him the way a wall looks at weather, and goes on nailing. Delia Finch comes up from the store with a flour sack. In it there is a loaf, cold bacon, a paper of coffee, though he has no way to boil it, because Delia's giving has always run ahead of her practicality, and a strip of red calico off the bolt. And it is the calico she makes him repeat back to her. "If you have to leave word at the fort and ride on," she says, "you tie this where a man cannot miss it. Gatepost or flag stand," and the note inside it, read, reads at a distance. A letter left on a desk is a letter asleep, but read on a gatepost shouts all day. And Thomas Weaver brings the note itself. He has written it at the kitchen table with Mary standing behind his chair, and he has crossed out more words than he has kept, because a man wants to say everything: the fever, and the neck, and the vomiting, and the boy's age, and God knows what beside, and in the end, a note that must be read fast by a busy stranger wants to be short enough to strike like a slap. What is folded into the oilcloth square in Henry's breast pocket says 4 words. The boy is worsening. They give him a start while the sun is still climbing. Ruth Cole walks out to his stirrup and looks up at him and gives him medicine of her own kind. "Ride the horse you have," she says, "not the horse your fear wants. Rest him whether you think he needs it or not. A dead hero on the trail is no use to me, and I have enough patience." He turns the buckskin's head northwest, and the town stands in the street to see him go. And it is Susan Weaver, holding her grandmother quilt around her shoulders in the morning cold, who asks the question the whole street is privately asking, in the voice of a child who assumes someone must know. How does Henry know the way in the dark? And Ruth Cole, watching the rider shrink up the long rise of the fort road, gives the answer that Henry himself will hang on to that night when the dark comes down around him and the world goes to grass and stars. He does not, child, she says. The road knows. His job is not to leave it. By the time the town has gone back to its chores, the rider is a speck, lifting and falling on the far swells, and then the road runs over the edge of the sky and takes him with it. And Cedar Ford is a town holding its breath in two directions at once. West toward a loft where a boy lies burning, and northwest toward a thread of wagon ruts where everything now rides on $11 a month shoulders. The lamp in the Weaver window had burned all night and stayed lit into the morning, and nobody trimmed it down. A lamp burning in daylight looks like a small mistake, unless you live in a town like this one, where it looks like exactly what it is, a place holding its light steady, until word comes back. The store fills up early on the third morning, and Delia Finch knows before the fourth customer crosses the plank floor that not one of them has come to buy anything for themselves. You are Delia now, and you have kept this counter for 9 years. And you can read a morning crowd the way Ruth Cole reads a pulse. Ordinarily, the third day after mail day is the quietest of the month. Today the bell over the door will not sit still. The German woman, Mrs. Albrecht, buys white sugar, the dear kind, and asks, casual as whether broth made with white sugar sits easier on a sick stomach. Old man Pearlie, who has not bought anything but tobacco and nails in a decade, stands a long while at the dry goods and finally purchases a small soft blanket and mumbles that his hens have taken to sleeping cold. 2 more come in for lemons, and you have no lemons. You have not had lemons since August, and everybody knows it, and they ask anyway, because lemons are what you squeeze into fever water, and asking felt like doing something. The whole town is shopping for one small boy. Sideways, the way this town does everything tender. Not one of them will walk up to the Weaver door and make Mary manage their sympathy. They will send it by way of sugar and blankets and casual questions, and Delia will stand at the meeting point of all of it, adding things to baskets and taking nothing for some of them, keeping the town's kindness moving like a freight agent. And then, in the middle of the morning, the crowd thins for a moment, and Mary Weaver herself comes in. She looks the way women look on the third day of a sick watch, scrubbed and pressed, and held together with pure will, and she is not here for sugar. She walks past the dry goods and the barrels and stops in front of the shelf behind the counter, the high one, and she looks up at the patent medicines, and Delia Finch feels the morning grow careful. Look at that shelf a moment through Mary's eyes, because in 1860, this shelf is one of the strangest places in America. A dozen bottles, each one dressed like a small ambassador from a better world. Wax seals, pleated paper caps, labels printed back east on good stock, crowded with promises in 6 sizes of type. There is a cough elixir with a lighthouse on it. There is a bitters with a portrait of its inventor, whiskered and grave as a senator. And in the center, where Amos always faces it because it sells, stands a tall bottle with a Greek temple engraved above its name. Dr. Easterly's celebrated fever and ague syrup, warranted pure, prepared according to scientific principles, recommended for fevers of every character, for chills, for bilious complaints, for the restoration of children and the aged. Below the temple, in smaller print, it lists the cities as if reciting scripture. New York, Philadelphia, St. Louis. Here is what nobody in this store knows about that bottle. And I mean nobody. Not Mary, who is considering it. Not Delia, who sells it. Not the freight company that hauled it. And possibly not even the man whose name is on it. Nobody knows what is in it. There is no law in this year that says the label must tell. There will be no such law in this country for almost 50 more years. The syrup might be mostly alcohol with sugar and sassafras. It might carry a good honest dose of quinine. In which case, for the shaking ague that haunts the river bottoms, it would truly help. It might be laced with opium, enough to quiet any child on earth, which a mother would read as the fever breaking. The bottle is a stranger in a fine coat, and it will not open its coat, and the law of the land stands behind its right to keep it shut. And still they sell. Friend, they sell by the wagon load, all over this country. And if we are going to understand this shelf, we owe the people who bought from it better than a smile at their expense. Stand where Mary Weaver is standing. Her boy is burning. The nearest sure doctor is 42 miles of grass away. And the rider is not yet a full day gone. And here on this shelf is a bottle that came from a city where there are hospitals and colleges and men in clean coats who spend their whole lives on exactly this. And the label says fever. And the label says children. And the label says warranted. That bottle is not selling medicine. It is selling the East. It is selling the feeling that somebody, somewhere, in a building with marble steps, understands what is happening in your loft, and has thought about it, and has written the answer down, and sealed it in glass, and sent it out to you here on the edge of the world. Hope, bottled where hope is manufactured, and freighted west at 4 cents a pound. Mary asks the price. Delia tells her, $1.06. And Mary counts it out of her apron pocket onto the counter, and then does not pick up the bottle. She stands, with her fingers resting on the coins, and Delia Finch watches her have the argument with herself. The same argument going on tonight in 10,000 kitchens across this territory. The last dose of anything Eli got was willow tea, and he could not keep it down. Suppose this held something stronger. Suppose it held the very thing, or suppose it quieted him into a sleep that only looked like healing, and she lost her one window into how he truly fared. Ruth's voice is in her head, and the label is in her eyes. And the label is louder, because the label is printed, and Ruth is only true. It is Delia who ends it, and she does it the way an honest storekeeper walks the edge of her own livelihood. She puts her hand flat on the counter beside the coins. Not on them, and she says, quiet, so the 2 men by the stove get none of it. Mary, I will tell you what I know about that bottle, which is the price of it. Ruth Cole will tell you what she knows, which is more. That is all. That is the whole sermon. And Mary Weaver looks up from the coins, and something in her face lets go, and she gathers her money back into her apron, and she buys instead a pound of the dear white sugar and a new soft spun, and she goes out with her chin steady, and the bell over the door swings quiet behind her. Amos, who has seen the whole of it from the post office desk and missed nothing, does not look up from his sorting. That bottle was $1.75, he says, mild as morning. And Delia says, so is my sleep. And that is the end of commerce for the moment in the Finch store. The rest of the day passes the way third days do, slow and listening. Toward evening, Delia does the accounts. And here, friend, is the last thing this chapter has to show you, and it is worth the whole price of admission. 2 ledgers come out from under the counter. In the first one she enters the sugar and the blankets and the sponge, the debits and the credits, who paid cash and who is carried till harvest. And the carried column is long, and it grows longer every autumn, and Amos frets about it every year of his life, and never once calls a debt in early. The second ledger has no lines and no ink, and it is kept nowhere but in the heads of the 2 Finches, and every other soul in this town. What is written in it, if it could be written, is who sat up with whom the winter of the deep snow, who gave what when the Albrecht barn burned, which families can be counted on for a horse, for a loan, for a rider. It is the true wealth of a town like this one, held in the only bank the frontier ever fully trusted. And tonight the whole town is quietly checking its balance, because a boy is sick and a rider is out, and nobody knows yet what this week is going to cost. A store on the frontier kept 2 ledgers, one for money, and one it never wrote down. And of the 2, the second was the one a town could not survive losing. Full dark comes on, and Delia steps out to take the air before locking up, and looks west down the street the way everyone in Cedar Ford has learned to look this week. The lamp was still burning. Someone was still awake. She went in and turned her own lamp up a little, and left it in the store window facing the street. For no reason she could have put into words, and every reason in the world. 12 miles out of Cedar Ford, the country stops pretending to be settled. You are Henry Tull again, and this time you know it, and you are alone. In a way you have never been alone in your 19 years back in Illinois. Alone meant a far field, with a fence at the end of it, and a supper bell somewhere behind. Out here, alone means the grass. It runs to the edge of the world on every side, hip high and moving, and the wind walks across it in long silver strokes. And the only man-made thing in the whole circle of the earth is the road under your horse. 2 wagon ruts and a ribbon of sod between them, running northwest ahead of you, like something drawn with a rule. Ruth Cole's words ride with you. The road knows. Your job is not to leave it, so you learn the road, mile by mile, the way you would learn a long, dim hallway in a strange house. It was made by freight wagons hauling to the fort, and freighters are creatures of habit, and their habits become landmarks. The first water is a shallow crossing where the creek loops north, and the buckskin drinks there, while you check his new shoes. All 4 tight, Gideon's nails, holding like Gideon's silences. The second landmark is a burned patch where some traveler's fire got away from him into the grass, 2 seasons old and greening over. The third is the lone tree. You have heard the barnmen speak of the lone tree, and here it is, a single cottonwood standing away off at the top of a swell, huge and old and entirely by itself. The only tree in a day of riding. It grew where some buffalo wallow held rein. and it has no company. And every traveler on this road has measured his progress against it for 20 years. Passing, it feels like passing a courthouse. You touch your hat to it, feeling half a fool, and the wind moves in its yellow leaves. And you ride on with the strange sense of having been counted. The afternoon goes long and gold, and you make your miles the way she told you. Trot and walk, trot and walk. Never the gallop your chest keeps begging for. This is the hardest work of the day, harder than the miles themselves. This holding back. Every slow mile, the fever in that loft is doing its own traveling, and no one out here can tell you which of you is moving faster. Your fear wants the horse spent by sundown, but you have seen what the country does to spent horses. And so you ride Ruth Cole's ride, not your own. And you talk to the buckskin because there is no one else. And the buckskin turns an ear back to you and keeps his bargain. Dusk catches you at the old stage station. The fourth landmark, abandoned these 2 years, since the line moved south. Sod walls going back to prairie. A roof beam down. A corral of gray poles still standing, because poles outlast purposes. You had thought to pass it and ride into the night. And now, standing in your stirrups in the last red light, you have your first real argument with yourself. The horse is not done, but he is deep into his strength. You can feel the difference in his stride, the way you would feel a change in a familiar staircase. And ahead of you lies the long, dark stretch the freighters call the flats, where the road runs thin over hardpan and prairie dog towns crowd close on either side. You know what a prairie dog town is to a horse in the dark. Hundreds of burrows, any one of them the perfect size to catch a hoof and crack a cannon bone like a green stick. And a rider pushing fast through that country at night is a man rolling dice with both their necks. And it comes to you, plain, as if someone said it aloud at your shoulder. The whole truth of your errand. The horse is the message. Kill the horse, and you kill the message. And the message is the boy. So you make the decision that costs the most and shows the least. The kind this whole story is built out of. You stop. 2 hours. You tell the buckskin, loosening the cinch in the ruined corral. 2 hours by the stars. And then the moon will be up to light the flats. And we go on. You pour him a measure of the oats Delia sacked, and eat cold bacon and half the loaf with your back against the sod wall. And the dark comes down over Kansas territory like a lid over a pot, and the stars come out. Friend, you have never seen them like this. And you grew up in open country. There is no lamp burning for 100 miles to argue with them. And they go down to the grass on every side, layer under layer, till the sky has depth like water, and the great white river of them runs right overhead, so bright it throws the faintest shadow of the corral poles. You find the 2 pointer stars of the Dipper, the way your father showed you back in Illinois, and follow them up to the North Star, hanging fixed and modest, the one nail in the whole turning sky. Northwest lies between that star and the place where the sun went down. You take your bearing off heaven itself, and feel the road agreeing with it under you. And something in your chest eases a half turn. Lost is the thing that kills travelers out here. You are not lost. You are only small, and small is survivable. Before you tighten the cinch again, you climb the swell behind the station for one look back. You could not say why. And there, low in the southeast, so faint you have to look beside it to see it at all. There is a light, one point of warm yellow, alone in 40 miles of black, the Weaver lamp. It has to be. There is nothing else it could be. No other flame in all that darkness. And you stand on the swell in the wind and look at it. One small burning window with a sick boy behind it, and a woman in a rocker, and a whole town lying around it in the dark, like a herd bedded around its calf. From here, the town you have felt so lonesome in for 6 months is one light, and every soul in it is inside that light. And so, you understand suddenly. You are what that light is burning for. The far end of its errand, the lamp cannot see you, and cannot know if you are riding well or lying in a wash with a dead horse. And it burns anyway, on faith, all night. And looking at it, you feel the fear in you change into something with more use in it. Something like being needed. Something like being from somewhere. The lamp was still burning. He could not know it. Not truly. Not at 12 miles. But he believed it. And out on the flats that night, believing it turned out to be the same thing, the moon comes up at last. Huge and orange off the eastern grass. Then smaller and whiter and full of light. And the flats turn silver blue ahead of you. Every burrow mouth, printing its little black shadow, reable as a page. You tighten the cinch, and the buckskin blows and takes the road again, rested and honest. And the two of you go on northwest through the enormous night. Trot and walk, trot and walk. A boy and a horse, and 4 words in an oilcloth square, with 30 miles ahead, and one lamp behind, and the North Star riding your right shoulder like a hand. The trouble, when it comes, does not come to the sick house. It comes out of plain kindness. On the bright edge of the 3rd afternoon, and it comes with a sound. You are Gideon Pratt now. You are 51 years old, and you have run the smithy at Cedar Ford for 9 years. And your hands have a memory in them that runs back through anvils in Missouri and Tennessee to a forge in Pennsylvania where your grandfather held the tongs. You are not a talking man. The town long ago stopped minding it. Iron does the talking. And today, the iron is a wagon tire that will not sit true, and you are working it slow around the swage when the sound comes through the open doors. Every man who has ever worked timber knows the 2 sounds an axe makes. There is the deep, clean chuck of a blade going into wood, which is the sound of the world working properly. And there is the other sound, shorter, wrong, with a note in it, like a question, followed by the silence where the next stroke should have been. You are moving before the shout comes. The shout only tells you where. Behind the Weaver place, at the woodlot by the creek, because that is the joke God plays on Little Town. The trouble comes visiting the trouble. Glasbauer, the big Prussian farmer from the North Quarter, walked over this afternoon of his own accord, with his own axe, to buck up a load of stove wood for a family that has a sick boy and no time to cut it. Kindness, plain as bread, and on some stroke among 100, A knot turned the blade, or the angle was a hair off after the long day. No one will ever know, and it will never matter. And the axe glanced off the log and went into the meat of his lower leg, above the boot top. And Klaus Bauer, who is nobody's fool, did the one exactly right thing a man alone can do. He got both hands clamped over it, and he shouted once, big enough to raise the street. What happens in the next 10 minutes? Friend, is the thing I have brought you to this wood lot to see. Because there is no doctor within 42 miles, and no bell to ring, and no wagon with a red cross on it anywhere on this earth yet. And watch what this town does instead. The first man there is the Albrecht boy, 710, who was fishing the creek. He does not know what to do and knows he does not know. So he does the right thing for a man who knows nothing. He runs for someone who knows something. And he runs, shouting the two words that organize this whole town faster than any command. Man hurt. By the time you come through the trees, big and unhurried. Because a blacksmith learns early that hurry drops things. There are already 6 people in the woodlot, and every one of them is working. Mrs. Albrecht has come off her porch with her sewing scissors and is cutting the trouser leg away from the wound. Not tearing, cutting, calm as if it were a pattern. Old man Pearlie has Bauer's shoulders propped against the log and is talking to him. Steady and pointless and perfect. The weather, the price of hogs, anything. Because a hurt man held by a voice is a man who stays with you. The Albrecht boy is back with a bucket of creek water. And this is where Ruth Cole arrived. Shawl half on, having covered the 1/4 mile from the Weaver house at a pace that would surprise you. And the first thing she does is stop the bucket with one hand. Not creek water, she says. Boiled and cooled enough to bear. Go, now. Ruth Cole has never heard the word germ. Nobody in this woodlot has. Nobody in this territory. And the men in Europe who are circling the idea this very year have not yet convinced their own colleagues. Ask Ruth why the water must be boiled, and she will tell you what her mother told her. That creek water is chancy for a wound, and boiled water is kindly. That wounds washed clean and dressed with boiled linen turn angry less often than wounds that are not. That is the whole of her science. It was bought with 40 years of watching. The same way sailors bought the weather before anyone mapped a storm. And it is correct. And she does not need to know why it is correct. And it will be 2 more generations before the men with microscopes catch up to the pattern her grandmother already worked by. You, Gideon, they put where they always put you, at the strength. You kneel and take over the clamping from Bauer's own failing hands. Your 2 hands around his shin, like a vice closing, firm above the wound. And the bleeding, which was bad, but not the terrible spurting kind, slows under pressure to a seep. You can feel the man's heart beating in your palms. You hold, and Pearlie talks, and the water comes, and Ruth goes to work in the space you leave her, and the woodlot around you settles into that hum you have heard before, at fires and floods, and one cave-in at a well digging, the hum of a town being its own rescue. The wound, when Ruth has washed it clean, is long and deep and ugly, but the leg lives, the foot warms, the toes answer when Bauer is told to move them. And he moves them and says something relieved and enormous in Prussian. The bone is nicked but whole. And then Ruth Cole leans close to the open wound with the lamp someone has fetched. Because the light is going, and she finds the thing she feared worse than the cut itself. Wool, threads of trouser wool, driven deep into the wound by the blade. 3 of them, maybe 4, dark against the raw. And here is the decision of this chapter. And it belongs to Ruth, kneeling in trampled grass with the light held over her hands. Leave the wool, and the wound may close over it. And she has seen what happens then. Days of false healing, and then the swelling. The heat, the red lines walking up the leg. The thing her mother called the wound, turning on you, which no medicine in her basket has ever once turned back, or go in after it. Now, into a wound that has finally quieted, with the man awake, and start the bleeding fresh, and hurt him worse than the axe did. She is quiet, perhaps 5 seconds. Then she says, to Bauer, in the voice she uses for frightened mothers and kicked horses alike. Klaus, there is cloth in the wound, and cloth cannot stay. I am going in after it, and it will be hard, and it will be short, and you may swear in any language you own. The flask comes out of the basket, the whiskey that has never been drunk from, and it is not for drinking now either. She rinses her sewing needle and her small tweezers in it, and pours a measure through the wound itself, and Bauer's whole body goes rigid at that fire. And Pearlie leans on the far shoulder, and you lean on the leg. Ask her why the whiskey, and it is her mother again. Spirits keep a wound sweet. She could not tell you what it kills. Having never been told anything lives there. She only knows the pattern. Wounds washed with spirits turn angry less often, and out here, the pattern is the whole book. What follows takes 4 minutes, and I will spend no more words on it than the town spent looks. You hold the leg still, and it takes all of you to do it. Bauer swears in Prussian, and once in English, and then apologizes in both languages to Mrs. Albrecht, who tells him not to be a fool and keeps the lamp steady herself when the boy's hands shake. 4 threads of wool come out and are shown to the light, on by on, like small caught fish, and the wound is washed once more, whiskey and boiled water, and drawn closed with stitches of white linen thread that boiled in the kettle alongside the rags. Ruth sews the way she knits, without hurry, each stitch its own finished work. The bandage goes on in wraps as neat as anything the army does. Then it is over, and the woodlot breathes, and Klaus Bauer lies propped against the log with the color coming slowly back into his big face. And he looks down at his own leg, cleaned and sewn and wrapped white in the lamplight. All of it done inside 1 hour by a town of farmers. And he says the sentence that you will carry out of this chapter. At home in the old country, he says, we had a surgeon in the village. I never once saw the whole village be the surgeon. They carry him to the nearest house on a barn door. 6 men and no wasted motion. And Mrs. Albrecht has beds enough with her sons grown. And by full dark, The crisis has folded itself away into ordinary tending. And you, Gideon, walking home past the Weaver place with your sleeves still rolled. Stop a moment in the road, 2 windows burning now. The Weaver lamp in the west window where it has burned for 3 nights. And now a second flame down the street behind Mrs. Albrecht's curtain, steady and small. Another watcher, settling into another chair. 2 lamps now, and the town stretched itself around the second one without a word. The way a blanket is stretched over 2 children in a cold room. And nobody anywhere said the word burden. And nobody anywhere thought it. You went on home in the dark, flexing the ache of Bauer's heartbeat out of your hands. And behind you, the 2 lights held their small ground against the whole prairie night. And held it. And held it. Morning comes up mild on the 4th day. And for 1 whole day, friend, the town gets to breathe. And we will breathe with it. Because a story about trouble is only honest if it shows you the hours between troubles too. When people mend and joke and do good work with their hands, this is a mending chapter. Settle into it. You are Gideon Pratt again. And you are in the smithy at first light. And you are not chewing anything. You have Klaus Bauer's leg on your mind, and a length of hickory on your bench. And this morning, the forge is going to make medicine. Ruth Cole came by at dawn, on her way between her 2 patients, and stood in the wide door with her basket on her arm and told you what she needs, the way one tradesman tells another. The wound is sewn and quiet, she says, but a sewn leg on a big restless man is a seam waiting to be torn. He will move in his sleep. He will forget himself reaching for the water cup. I want that leg persuaded to hold still for 2 weeks. And persuading a Prussian takes lumber. Then she was gone up the street. And you stood a while looking at the hickory, thinking, the way you think best, through your hands. A splint sounds like a simple thing. 2 sticks and a rag. And a bad splint is exactly that. You have seen bad splints. You have seen what they cost. So watch now what a careful man does instead. Because this bench, this morning, is as close to a hospital workshop as this county owns. The hickory splits straight and true, and you dress 2 staves of it with the draw knife, long enough to run from below the knee to past the ankle. So the joints above and below the wound are both spoken for, because a splint that lets the ankle wander is a gate with 1 hinge. You round every edge until your thumb can find no corner anywhere, because a square edge against flesh for 2 weeks digs a sore. And a sore under a bandage where no one can see it is how a small trouble starts, a large one. Then the padding. And here, Delia Finch has already sent the boy up from the store with a roll of raw wool. And you tease it out and lay it thick. More than looks needed, because you know something about swelling that you learned the hard way. And we will get to the hard way presently. Last, the straps, harness leather, soft old lines cut down, and instead of tying knots that a feverish hand picks at in the night, you punch holes and set small buckles, so the whole rig can be loosened in a moment by anyone in the dark. And you make one more thing, because you are you. You take a bar of iron and turn a neat crutch head at the top of it. Then set it aside and shake your head and start again in wood. because iron is your first answer to every question, and it is the wrong answer for a thing that must live under a man's arm. The second crutch is ash, shaved, smooth, with a crosspiece wrapped in sacking, and when it is done you stand it against the wall where he will see it from the bed. Because a laid-up man does better looking at the tool of his freedom than at the ceiling. You carry the whole kit down to the Albrecht place at mid-morning, and the fitting of it is a small comedy that does everyone good. Bauer holds court from the bed, propped up huge and pink and deeply embarrassed at his own helplessness. And Mrs. Albrecht supervises you the way she supervises everything. And when the splint is buckled on and the leg lies quiet in its wooden cradle, Bauer looks down at the work, the rounded staves, the wool, the buckles, and being a farmer who knows joinery when he sees it, he says, "You have made me a fence." And you say, "More words than you have said all week. Stay inside it." And the room laughs, and that laugh is medicine too, and everyone in it knows so. But walking back up the street with your tools, you pass the Hollis place. And this is the part of the morning I would not let you skip, because it keeps this chapter honest. Ed Hollis is in his yard, forking hay to his milk cow, and he raises a hand to you, and you raise one back, the same as every day. And the same as every day, you look at the way he moves. 2 winters ago, Ed Hollis came off a green horse and put his wrist out of joint. Or so it looked. And there was no one else. And he was in pain. And you have strong hands and a level head. And so you did what the town needed done. You set it. You pulled it straight and bound it. And it knitted. And everyone said what a blessing. And for a while, you believed them. It knitted crooked, not badly, just enough. Enough that Ed Hollis buttons his collar with his left hand now. Enough that he has a particular way of taking up a pitchfork. A small accommodation, worked so deep into him by now that he likely never thinks of it. Nobody in this town has ever once blamed you. Ed, least of all. He thanks you yet. And means it. A doctor with a diploma might have done no better. Wrists being the puzzle boxes they are. And that is true. And you know it is true. And you also know this. And you have never said it to a living soul. So I will say it for you. Because it deserves saying out loud in a story about places like this. Experience is not the same thing as knowledge. Experience is just the mistakes that live. Everything you know about bones you learned from iron and from getting it wrong on your neighbors. One wrist, one collarbone, one dislocated shoulder at a time. And there is no school out here to tell you which of your lessons are wisdom and which are luck that has not run out yet. So you round your edges. You pad more than looks needed. You build the fence strong and stand the crutch where hope can see it. A careful man doctoring beyond his knowledge does not become knowledgeable. He becomes very, very careful. And out here, careful is the whole of the oath. In the afternoon, Bauer asks you the question. You are checking the splint straps, and he is watching your face. And he asks it straight, the way you would ask. Man to man, when do I work again? Gideon, harvest is not finished, and there it is. The small decision this gentle chapter turns on. The kind answer is soon. and soon would be a lie. And the lie would put him on that leg in 10 days and tear Ruth's seam and undo the whole town's work. So you give him the truth, and you give it the way you would want it. Not this harvest. You say, the leg will carry you by frost if you are wise. It will carry you to church by Christmas. It will plow in the spring. And Klaus Bauer looks at the ceiling a while, doing the sums every hurt man on this frontier has done. The unharvested acres, the winter coming, and then he says, quietly, then I am wise. And that is that, and his neighbors will get his corn in, and he knows they will. And that knowing is the only reason a man out here can afford to be wise. You walk home in the gold end of the afternoon, and at the smithy, you take up the wagon tire you abandoned 3 days ago, and you ring it true on the anvil, and the sound goes out over the town. That steady, bright iron bell, stroke after stroke, easy and unhurried. And here is a thing you will never know. Gideon. So the story will know it for you. Up and down the street, women at their stoves and men at their cribs lift their heads a moment at that sound and go back to their work half smiling. The anvil ringing means the blacksmith is back at the blacksmith's work. It means the emergencies are over for now. The sowing held, the fence built, the town's strong hands free again for ordinary things. A town learns to read its own sounds the way it reads its windows. And this evening, Cedar Ford reads the iron the way it reads a lamp put out at last, and rests easier for it. All up and down the street, iron ringing meant the worst was over at the forge. The lamp in the weaver window meant the watching went on. A town this size speaks a whole language without one word in it. And by the 4th evening, friend, you are beginning to be fluent. The 5th day starts wrong before sunup, and it starts wrong at the wrong house. You are Dahlia Finch, and you are opening the store early because the freight is due. And through the gray morning comes young Peter Kessler, 12 years old, no quad, running, and the message he carries is nothing the town's language has a ready sign for. It is not the boy Eli, it is his own house, mother and father both, he says, sick in the night, both at once, purging and casting up and too weak by dawn to cross the room, and his little sisters crying, and he did not know who to run to. So he ran to the store, because the store is where everything in this town begins. You send him to Ruth Cole's at a run and follow with your shawl half pin, and by full morning the shape of the new trouble is laid out plain. And it is a shape nobody likes. The Kesslers live at the north end, a tidy family, careful people. Ruth comes from their door at mid-morning with her face closed, and before she can cross the street, Mrs. Albrecht's married daughter is calling from 2 doors down. Her husband is taken the same way. The purging, the cramps, the terrible thirst. By noon, it is 4 households. By early afternoon, it is 6. All at the north end. All struck inside the same day and a half. And the arithmetic of that is doing something cold in everyone's stomach. Because sickness that walks house to house down one end of a street is not weather. It is moving through something, or on something, or in something. And nobody can see what. And then, at the worst hour, it stops being the North End's trouble. Amos Finch sorting freight in his own doorway, goes gray, sets down a crate of tinware very carefully, says, "Delia, I believe I will sit down a moment," and does not so much sit as fold, and you get him to bed with your heart going like a hammer, and the store stands closed on a freight day for the first time in 9 years. And now it is your lamp, friend, your window, your chair pulled to your own bedside, and the town's trouble has walked in through the one door in Cedar Ford that everyone walks through. Sundown brings the town to the church, because that is where a town this size does its thinking, when the thinking must be done together. No pastor calls the meeting. Cedar Ford shares a circuit preacher with 3 other towns, and he is 2 towns away. The men and women simply gather. Lamps set along the front bench, and what happens for the next hour, I want you to listen to closely, because you are hearing the exact sound of the year 1860. This is what it sounded like when good, intelligent, frightened people stood together at the edge of everything their age knew, and peered over it, and argued about what was down there in the dark. Old Man Pearlie speaks first, and he speaks for the oldest idea in the room. "It is the air," he says. "Bad air. A miasma come up off the low ground. The creek has been dropping all month, and the mudflats stink of an evening, and everyone here has smelled it. Burn sulfur in the sick room," he says. "Smoke the bad air out." His father did it in Tennessee in the cholera year of 33. And friend, do not smile at Pearlie. The best trained physicians in London and Paris this very year would nod along with most of what he just said. Miasma is not folk superstition in 1860. It is the leading science of the age, taught in the colleges, printed in the journals. It is wrong, but it is wrong in the way most science is wrong on its way to being right. And it is all these people have been given. Then Karl Kessler stands up, weak as he is, come from his own sickbed, wrapped in a blanket to defend the thing he built with his own hands, because he has heard the murmur that is starting, the way a sick man always hears it. Some folks are saying it is the well, his well, the well he dug and stoned himself, the sweetest water at the north end. Half the street draws from it, and always has. And he says the sentence that the whole century keeps saying, the sentence that is killing people this year in London and New York and on every emigrant trail west. And he says it with complete sincerity. The water is clear, he says. Look at it. Clear as glass. Cold as October. No smell to it at all. Bad water announces itself. Everyone knows that. Green water. Stinking water. That is bad water. How can water that looks clean and tastes sweet carry death in it? It cannot. It stands to reason. It stands to reason. And every head in the church nods a little, because it does stand to reason. And reason, friend, is a lamp that lights only as far as its own oil, and the oil of this age runs out exactly at the lip of that well. There is no instrument in Kansas territory that could show them what is in that clear water. The men who will prove such things are alive tonight, working in rooms across an ocean, and their proofs are years away. And none of it is here in this church where it is needed. But something else is here. It is sitting on the third bench with its basket at its feet. and it has been counting. Ruth Cole stands, and the church goes quiet for her, and she does not offer a theory, because she does not have one, and she is too honest to pretend. What she has is a pattern, and she lays it out the way she would lay out linen. Plain and flat, where everyone can see. 6 households sick, she says, and she names them, and the naming takes a while, and that is part of her point. Every one of the 6 draws from the Kessler well. The weavers are sick, but the weaver boy sickened 5 days ago with a different sickness entire. Fever and the stiff neck, no purging, and the weavers draw from their own well by the creek. The Albrechts, not sick, they draw from the town pump by the church. The Hollis family, not sick, creek and rain barrel. And Amos, she says, and here her voice stays exactly level, which costs her. Amos Finch hauled 2 barrels of drinking water from the Kessler well on Tuesday, because the store cistern ran low on freight week, same as he does every freight week. She lets the count sit in the lamplight a moment. I cannot tell you why, she says. I do not know why. Maybe Mr. Purley has it right, and the miasma lies thicker at the north end. I cannot see air any better than I can see water. But I have buried enough neighbors in 40 years to know one thing past arguing, and it is this. When the same trouble visits 6 houses, you look for the one thing the 6 houses share, and when you find it, you do not need to understand it to step around it. The 6 houses share that well. I say we chain the well, and haul from the pump and the creek springs, and see what the week says. If I am wrong, we have carried water uphill for a week, and I will beg Carl Kessler's pardon in front of this whole church. If I am right, the pardon will not be needed, and neither will more graves. There it is. Friend, the decision of this chapter, and I want you to feel the true weight of it before the town votes, because it is heavier than it looks from where we sit. To close that well is to say, without proof, without a single thing anyone can see or smell or show, that a good man's well, a good man's work, the water his own children were raised on, is killing his neighbors. Carl Kessler is not a fool, and he is not a villain. He is a sick, frightened man being asked to accept a verdict with no evidence behind it but arithmetic. And the arithmetic is being done by a woman with no letters after her name, in a church with no pastor, in a territory with no doctor. And it would be the easiest thing in the world for him to say no, and for the town to split down its middle, north end against south, the way frightened towns have split over less. It has happened elsewhere. It is happening elsewhere. This very year, nobody cheers. This is not a town that cheers, but something passes through the church like the release of a held breath. Because the dangerous moment, the splitting moment, just walked past them and did not stop. And it did not stop, because one sick man chose the count over his pride in front of everybody. Towns live and die on such moments, and most never know it. This one, tonight, was allowed to see its own near miss. Lamplit, 3rd bench from the front. The practical work takes an hour. The well gets its chain and a board across the sweep, and the town lays out its water lines for the duration. The church pump for the north end. The creek springs above town for the south. Boiled at that, Ruth is firm, and nobody argues. And the strong backs are sorted to haul, for the household's too sick to haul. And the very next morning, friend, you can stand at the store window where Delia stands, her own husband sick behind her in the back room, and watch the town shape itself to its new necessity. Down the street they come, in the early light, women with yoked pails, boys with barrows and barrows, old Pearlie himself, with 2 buckets and his sulfur theory intact, and his hands helping anyway. A line of neighbors moving water house to the sick end of town, steady as a bucket brigade at a fire that nobody can see. A line at the water is the oldest shape a village makes when it is afraid and has decided not to act afraid. Ships have made it. Deserts have made it. And a little town in Kansas Territory made it in the autumn of 1860, hauling uphill on the strength of an old woman's counting. And though not one soul in that line could have told you what cholera morbus truly was, or what swam unseen in the sweetest-looking water, the line itself was the correct medicine, the exact, precise, correct medicine, arrived at with no microscope but memory, and no authority but trust. That night there are 5 lamps burning in Cedar Ford, and one of them is yours, Delia, in the store window, over the words dry goods and groceries, where you sit up with Amos through the small hours, spooning boiled water with a pinch of salt and a pinch of sugar into him, a spoonful at a time, because Ruth Cole told you thirst is the killer in this sickness, and the fight is fought a spoonful at a time. And you fight it, hour by hour, spoon by spoon, 5 lamps, and between them, all night, the dark street, and the chained well, standing silent at the north end, like a caught thief who may yet prove innocent, and the long prairie wind carrying 40 miles to the northwest. No word yet, no rider, no answer, only the town. Holding, the lamps were still burning. Cedar Ford was still awake, and morning, when it came, would come to a town that had already learned the hardest lesson this whole story has to teach, and learned it whole nights before any doctor could arrive to confirm it. You cannot always see the enemy. You can always still count. This is the night Ruth Cole named, the 3rd night by her count, the night the fever was to show its whole hand. So the town does what the frontier always did on such nights. And friend, this chapter has no axe in it and no chained well, no decision hanging over anyone. I am giving you this hour on purpose, because if you carry away only one picture of what medicine truly was in the year 1860, out beyond the reach of every diploma in America, I want it to be this one: a lamp, a chair, a bowl of water, and somebody's neighbor in the chair. They called it sitting up with the sick. You will find the phrase in 1,000 old letters and diaries, written as plainly as folks wrote about plowing or weather, because it was as common as either. When a house had serious sickness in it, the neighbors came at nightfall and took the dark hours in shifts, so the family could sleep, because everyone understood a truth we have half forgotten, that nursing is labor, that it drains a body like harvest work, and that a mother worn down to nothing on the 5th night is no good to her child on the 6th, when the child may need her most. Nobody organizes it. That is the wonder of the thing. There is no list, no committee. Nobody assigns the hours. And yet, a little after full dark, you, Mary Weaver, hear the soft knock that does not wait for an answer. And it is Mrs. Albrecht with her shawl and her mending basket, come to take the first watch. And behind her in the dark street, 2 more figures are already sorting the later hours between themselves in murmurs. The town has read your window. The town has come. Watch how it goes. This old ceremony, because every move of it means something. Mrs. Albrecht does not ask how the boy is. Asking makes the mother say it out loud. And saying it out loud costs. Instead, she sets her basket down and looks at the loft ladder and says, "Has he kept anything down since supper?" Which is a question with work in it. A question a nurse asks, and you tell her. Willow tea at sundown, kept down these 2 hours. The first thing to stay with him all day. And saying that out loud costs nothing at all. Saying that out loud is the first good thing your own voice has been given to carry in 3 days. Then she sends you to bed. There is a way these women do it. Unanswerable as gravity. You will sleep now. Mary, she says, and if he so much as turns over heavy, I will have you up those stairs before I have finished calling your name. And you go, because the custom only works if the family honors its half of it. And you lie down beside Thomas, with your clothes on, telling yourself you will only rest your eyes. And the house folds its sounds around you, the fire settling, the rocker going soft and slow overhead, and you are asleep in 4 minutes, deep as a well, while another woman's hands wring the cloth for your son's forehead. The watchers change at midnight, quiet as the watch changing on a ship. Mrs. Albrecht down the ladder, a whisper in the kitchen, kept the tea down, slept since 10, cooler to my hand, but I would not swear to it. And old Widow Whitfield, up, and here, friend, meet the oldest soul in Cedar Ford, because she has earned her place in this story. 80-some years old. Nobody knows the exact figure, and she guards it like money. She buried 1 husband in Kentucky and another in Missouri, raised 9 children and outlived 4 of them, and she has sat up with the sick across 60 years and 3 territories. She brings her knitting. She always brings her knitting. Gray wool sock heels, turned by the 100 down, all those years, and she settles into the rocker with her needles going before her shawl is fully off. Tick, 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 steady as a clock. And any child in this town will tell you that sound is the safest sound in the world to be sick to. You wake in the night, burning and strange, and the needles are going in the lamplight, and you know exactly where you are, and that you are watched, and you go back down into sleep like a stone into a pond. Toward 1 in the morning, Eli surfaces, hot and fretful and far from himself, and asks the dark a question that has no sense in it. Something about the calves being out, and Widow Whitfield does not correct him and does not shush him. She answers him inside his own dream. Easy as passing the bread. The calves are in, child, she says, needles never pausing. Your father penned them at dusk. I watched him do it. And the boy sighs, and the fret goes out of him, and he sinks back down. The question answered in the country where it was asked. 60 years of nights taught her that. You do not drag the sick back over the fence to where things make sense. You climb over to them. She gives him water when he stirs, a spoonful at a time, patient as rain. She wrings the cloth and lays it new across his forehead, and between times she knits and rocks, and now and then she looks at the boy the long way, the way you look at weather far off, measuring something. She has seen a great many fevers from this chair. She is not measuring what you fear she is measuring. She is counting his breathing against her needles, and finding it slower than last night, and deeper, and finding the sweat coming up on him at last, small and fine along the hairline, and 80 years old in a rocking chair at 2 in the morning. She is reading those signs the way a pilot reads water. And what she reads, she keeps to herself, because hope spoken too early is a debt, and she has been burned lending it. And somewhere in that same hour, friend, pull back from this one loft and look at the night the way the stars see it. Across the whole width of this country, this same lamp is burning, in sod houses on the Nebraska districts and cabins in the Oregon fir, in mining camps, up dry gulches in the Colorado goldfields, wherever people have carried themselves past the edge of the settled map. Tonight, this exact night, in 1860, there are 10,000 rooms just like this one. A lamp turned low. Sin. Somebody's neighbor in the chair, knitting or whittling or only sitting, keeping the sleep of somebody else's child. Almost none of their names were ever written down. No monument anywhere carries them. But more Americans were carried through their dangerous nights by that chair than by every hospital then standing in the Republic. And it is worth one moment of this quiet hour to say so, plainly, while the needles tick, the gray watch, the one before dawn, falls to Ruth Cole, who comes from the Kessler end of town smelling of vinegar and wood smoke, having slept, by our best arithmetic, about 11 hours in the past 5 days. Widow Whitfield gives her the night's report in the doorway, in the shorthand of 2 women with a century of sick rooms between them. T stayed down, slept mostly, wandered once, came back easy, sweating small since 2. Ruth climbs the ladder and sits a long while with her hand on the boy's chest, feeling what the hand can feel. And near 5, with the window going from black to iron gray, Eli Weaver turns over of his own accord, all the way over, the stiff neck bending to let him, and burrows into the pillow the way boys do, and says, from 9/10 asleep, in his own voice, the first sentence in 3 days that belongs entirely to him. Is it Saturday? That is all. Is it Saturday? And Ruth Cole sits back in the chair and lets out a breath that goes all the way down and does not answer him, because he is already under again, sleeping, now the way children sleep, loose and heavy and everywhere. The fever not gone? She can feel it still smoldering under her hand, but stepped back, stepped well back, The third night ending, and the hand shone. And it is not the hand she feared. She comes down the ladder at first light and finds you, Mary, already at the stove. And she does not make a speech. Fever is easing, she says. He asked, was it Saturday? We are not done. And I want him watched close through tomorrow. But Mary, he asked, was it Saturday? And you nod, and turn to the stove, and stand very still over the kettle for the space of 1 minute. Your back to the room, your hand over your mouth, and Ruth Cole examines the ceiling boards with great attention until the minute is over. And then you wash your face at the basin and put the coffee on, and the morning starts. And that is how joy was managed in a Kansas kitchen. Friend, in the fall of 1860, the lamp in the window had burned all night, tended through 3 pairs of hands. Toward full sunrise, Thomas moved to blow it out, and Mary stopped him. Not yet, she said. Henry is still out there somewhere, and the Kessler end is still dark and sick, and a lamp is cheap. Let it say what it has been saying. So it burned on into the morning, small and defiant under the enormous daylight. The lamp burned low, and was refilled, and burned on, and 40 miles to the northwest. At that very hour, a tired young man on a tired buckskin horse was riding up at last toward a line of buildings on the open prairie, and a flag climbing a pole in the morning wind. The fort announces itself first as a flag, then as a sound. You are Henry Tull, and you have been 2 nights and a day and a half on this road, and you have started talking to the buckskin in full sentences. The flats are behind you. Your food is gone but the crusts. And now, coming up the long last rise in the middle morning, you see it, a seam of buildings lying on the prairie ahead. Low and orderly and impossibly right, angled after 2 days of country that has no corners in it anywhere. And the sound that reaches you across the last mile is a bugle, thin and bright, ordering some piece of the army's morning, and your tired horse lifts his head at it. And so, if we are honest, do you? Fort Harker is not a walled castle, and if you grew up on picture book forts that surprises you, it is a great open square of buildings around a parade ground, barracks and stables and storehouses, everything whitewashed or raw lumber, everything in lines, wood smoke standing up from a dozen chimneys, cavalry mounts in long corrals, men crossing the square at angles with the busy, uninterested walk of soldiers everywhere. After Cedar Ford, after the flats, it looks like a piece of the East broke off and was set down here on the grass. And in a sense, friend, that is exactly what it is. At the gate, which is only a gap between buildings with a sentry in it, you say your errand for the first time out loud, and you hear your own voice fray in the middle of it. Sick boy in Cedar Ford, fever, 5 days. I am sent for the surgeon, and the sentry, a boy scarcely older than you, with a Galway sound in his voice, does not send you away, and does not let you in, but does the thing armies do. He passes you along, corporal of the guard, then a sergeant, gray-mustached, who looks at your horse before he looks at you, and reads the whole 2 days in the salt dried on the buckskin's shoulders and says, not unkindly, "Come on then," and walks you across a corner of the parade ground toward a long, low building at the edge of the square, standing a little apart from its neighbors, with a wide porch and whitewash newer than the rest. The post hospital. Now, stop with Henry in that doorway a moment, because what he is looking at, no one in Cedar Ford has ever seen, and most of them never will. A ward. One long, clean room with light coming in from both sides and down its length. In a row. Iron-framed beds. Real beds, 8 of them, made up tight and square with gray blankets. 2 holding soldiers. 1 with a bandaged hand. 1 with a flushed dose of fever. The floor is scrubbed plank. There is a table with a lamp and a ledger. Against the far wall stands a tall wooden chest of drawers and cupboards, and every drawer has a paper label in a neat clerk's hand, and the doors of it are closed and locked, and you can smell the place from the porch. And it does not smell like sickness. It smells like lye soap and something sharper underneath. A clean, bitter smell you have no name for. And the whole of it together says one thing: order. Sickness here is met with order, with rows and labels and ledgers, and something in you, 2 nights out from a town, holding itself together with lamps and neighbors, wants to sit down on that scrubbed floor and hand the whole errand over to whoever owns this room. The man who owns this room at the moment is not the man you came for. He is a hospital steward, which is the Army's word for a soldier trained up to run the ward. Keep the medicines, mix the doses, and mind the sick between the surgeon's rounds. He is maybe 35, sandy, precisi, with his sleeves rolled and an apron over his uniform, and he listens to your whole errand, standing still, which after 2 days of moving feels strange to you, being truly listened to. Then he says the sentence, "You rode 42 miles to not hear." The surgeon is not at the post. Doctor rode out 3 days ago. He says, with 2 companies gone west along the river. Trouble expected at the crossings. And where the companies go, the surgeon goes. That is the shape of the service. Might be back inside a week, might be longer. And I would be lying if I named a day. The room does not change. The light goes on, lying in clean stripes across the 8 beds. But you feel the floor of your errand drop out from under it, and the steward watches it happen in your face. And being a man who has stood in this ward for years and seen every kind of trouble walk up that porch, he does not let the silence sit. He says, "Tell it to me again." The boy, slower, everything. And he pulls the ledger to him and takes up a pen. And friend, that small motion, that pen, is the Army's whole medicine showing itself. Because writing a thing down is the first act of a mind that intends to be useful about it. You tell it slower. 5 days. The fever climbing and falling and climbing worse. The stiff neck. The crying out when his head was lifted. The vomiting. Then the vomiting easing. Willow bark tea. An old woman with 40 years of nursing running the case. And the steward looks up at that and says, "Does she keep the sick room aired and the water boiled?" And you say yes. Both. It is her law. And he nods slowly. The nod one tradesman gives another's work. and says, "Then your town has better medicine in it than it knows." And now watch him walk the exact edge of what he is allowed, because there is regulation in every drawer of that locked chest, and a steward who dispenses the government's medicine to civilians on his own, say so is a man gambling his stripes. He stands a moment, looking at his locked cupboard, and what tips him, you will always believe, is nothing you said. It is the note. You put the oilcloth square on his table, unfolded, and the 4 words lie there in Thomas Weaver's careful hand. The boy is worsening, and the steward reads them. 4 words that came 42 miles, and he takes out his keys. What he measures out is a paper of powders, folded in doses, and he tells you the name and makes you say it back. Quinine, sulfate of quinine, from cinchona bark, the fever bark. And here is a thing worth knowing. Friend, it is a cousin by trade to the willow bark already in Ruth Cole's basket, the wild and the refined answer to the same old enemy. And in this year of 1860, it is the closest thing to a true specific medicine that the whole locked chest contains. He writes the doses out plain on a paper. For the woman running the case, he says, she will read it. And he wraps powder and paper in oilskin against the weather. And he will take no payment. And being asked twice, he squares the ledger in front of him and says, I will enter it as issued to the post's discretion, and we will let the army argue with me about a sick child when the army gets home. Then he gives you the other thing, the thing that splits your road in 2. There is a civilian doctor, he says, works the stage road south of here, name of Marsh, rides the line between the swing stations, stitches the drivers, doses the station men, has done for years. The mail rider through here 2 days back, said Marsh, was working the eastern stations this week. If a man rode hard south from here, cross country by the freight cutoff, he might strike the stage road by dark, might find Marsh at one of 3 stations, might miss him by 6 hours in either direction, and no way on God's grass to know beforehand. And there it is. Henry, there is the choice, and no one is going to make it for you. And I want you to feel how alone it stands. In your saddlebag now there is a certainty, small and folded in oilskin, real medicine, matched to a fever, with the doses written plain. Ride for home this hour, and you can put it in Ruth Cole's hands sometime tomorrow, and you will have done your errand entire. And no man will ever say you failed it. That is the sure road, or there is the other road. South, longer, crooked, a night ride down a cutoff you have never seen, hunting a moving man along a line of stations. And at the end of it, maybe, a doctor in the flesh, hands and eyes and 30 years of cases, worth more than any folded paper. Or maybe an empty station and a cold trail, and your certainty grown 2 days older in the saddlebag while you chased a better thing you never caught, the sure, small thing, or the uncertain, greater one. Stand there in the hospital doorway with him, friend, and be honest about which way you would jump. Henry Tull stands looking south across the parade ground for the time it takes the flag shadow to move a hand's width. And what decides him? In the end, is arithmetic, learned in a store, and a smithy, and a church with lamps down the front bench. The powders answer the fever. If the fever is the kind that quinine answers, nobody, the steward himself said as much, can promise it is. But a doctor answers whatever it is. A doctor is the answer to questions nobody in Cedar Ford knows how to ask. And the boy is worsening. Worsening does not wait on certainty. And it seemed to him, he told Ruth Cole long afterward, that the town had not sent him all this way for the smaller of two answers. He asks the steward for paper and writes his own note. The second note of this story: print letters, livery barn, spelling, telling the surgeon, whenever the surgeon should ride in, that Cedar Ford has fever and flux both, and would bless his coming. And out at the gate, he unties Delia Finch's strip of red calico from around the loaf end in his flour sack, and he ties it high on the gate post, where no incoming rider could miss it in 100 yards, and folds his note inside the knot. Red reads at a distance. A letter on a desk is a letter asleep. The sergeant with the gray mustache watches all this, and says nothing about it, and then does the one thing the army can do for you. He looks at the buckskin, stripped and watered and fed these 2 hours at the public trough, and he looks at the sun, and he says, the freight cutoff bears south by the burned station chimney, 2 miles down. Ride the grass beside the trace, easier on his legs. And son, water twice before dark. It is a dry road. By noon you are south of the fort, and the flag is gone behind the rises, and the country ahead of you is new again, unmarked, unknown, rolling away toward a stage road you have never seen, and a doctor who may be anywhere upon it. Behind you, the fort shrank to a smudge, and then to nothing. And ahead of you was a road you did not know, and you set your horse on it, because the boy was worsening, and worsening does not wait for certainty. And far behind you, small in the morning, a strip of red calico stood out straight in the prairie wind, talking all day to the empty northwest road. The stage road, when Henry finally strikes it, is nothing but 2 ruts and a line of telegraph poles that were promised and never wired, marching away east and west in the last light. But a road with poles along it feels like civilization after the cutoff, and nailed to the nearest pole is a board with a name burned into it: Ash Hollow Station, 4 miles and an arrow. And you turn the buckskin east along the ruts with your heart doing arithmetic again. 3 stations within a night's ride. The steward said, a moving man, somewhere among them, or nowhere. Ash Hollow is dark when you raise it. Just a sod barn and a low station house with the stock dozing in the corral. And the station keeper comes out in his shirt with a shotgun held soft, because night riders get met carefully out here. And when you say the word doctor, he points his chin east along the road before you finish the sentence. Marsh went down to Willow Creek Station this evening, he says. Stage man mangled his hand in the harness rig. You want the doctor. Ride for Willow Creek, and if he has finished there, he will be sleeping there, because even that man sleeps. 9 miles, 9 more miles. Friend, on a horse with 3 days in his legs, you stand down and walk the buckskin the first mile of it, talking to him, and he leans his head against your chest a moment in the dark, and then he takes up the road again, because horses are owed more by this country than it ever paid them. It is close to midnight when Willow Creek Station shows itself. And it shows itself in a way you will remember all your life. Every window of the low station house is lit. Lamps move together into one room, the way lamps gather where work is being done on a man. And as you ride up the yard, you can see through the window glass, plain as a picture in a frame, the whole scene within. A man sitting at a plank table, gray-faced, his arm laid out on folded sacking, two lamps drawn close, and a woman holding a third and bent over the arm. In his shirt sleeves, a lean man of maybe 55, with steel spectacles pushed up on his forehead, doing something slow and exact with both hands, his shadow thrown up huge on the whitewashed wall behind him. You have ridden 3 days and better than 70 miles, and there he is, through a window, the first doctor you have ever seen in your life. The station keeper's wife lets you in with a finger to her lips, and you stand against the wall inside the door, hat in your hands, and watch the end of it. The stage man's hand was crushed and torn between the harness ring and a panicked wheeler's pull, and Dr. Marsh is closing the last of the wounds. And what strikes you first, watching, is what does not happen. There is no hurry in the room, and no show either. He works the needle the way Gideon works iron, the way Ruth sews a wound. Each stitch its own finished work, and he talks while he works, low and level, not to the room but to the patient, telling the man what he is doing as he does it, and asking him small questions about the stage schedule that have nothing to do with anything. And the man answers them, and answering keeps him from watching the needle. And you recognize the trick, friend, because old man Pearlie did the same office for Klaus Bauer in the woodlot. Only Pearlie never knew it was a trick known to physicians. When it is done, 11 stitches in all, the hand dressed and slung, Marsh straightens up with both fists in the small of his back, the way men of 55 straighten. And only then does he seem to notice the trail-dusted stranger standing against his wall. And what he says first is not, "Who are you?" He looks at you a long moment over the spectacles and says, "How far have you come?" "Cedar Ford," you say. "Better than 70 miles by way of the fort. There is a boy." And you put the note on the table by the lamps, the oilcloth square, 4 words in a farmer's careful hand, and Dr. Marsh reads it standing very still. Now, friend, while he reads, let the story tell you who this man is, because his kind mattered enormously, and history has mostly forgotten to introduce them. Nathaniel Marsh holds a diploma from a proprietary medical college in Cincinnati. 2 winters of lectures, which was a common length of doctoring school in this republic, and he would be the first to tell you that the paper made him legal and the road made him a doctor. 30 years he has practiced. Ohio, then Missouri. Now, this thin line of stations, strung across the grass. He owns a good horse, a worn saddle, and the black bag, and not a great deal else. He is paid in coin sometimes, and in hams, oats, firewood, knitted socks, and thanks. And there are seasons when the socks outnumber the coins badly. He has ridden 40 miles to lose a patient and 40 home again, more times than he has ever counted, because counting that number does a man no good. What the years have given him instead of money is exactly the thing Cedar Ford is hoping for. Cases, thousands of cases, birth to deathbed, gunshot to childbed fever, until the pattern sense that Ruth Cole built out of one town's troubles. This man has built out of 3 states' worth. He sets the note down and asks his questions. And there are only 3. And each one, you realize later, is a door he is closing or opening. How many days? He says. 5. You tell him. 6. Now, when his mother lifts his head, what happens? He cries out and goes stiff. You say, or he did. They say, it eased some. The last night I was there. Is he purging? And you say, no, sir. That is the other trouble. And you tell him about the north end, the well, 6 households, and the old woman who counted, and Carl Kessler chaining his own well with his own hands, and Dr. Marsh listens to all of it with his eyes somewhere over your shoulder. And then he does the thing you could not have known to expect. He laughs. One short breath of a laugh, tired and real. And he takes off the spectacles and rubs his eyes and says, to the station keeper's wife, as much as to you, chain the well on the counting alone. There are men on hospital boards in St. Louis who could not be persuaded to that with a brass band. Then, to you, who is the woman who counted? And you say her name, Ruth Cole, and he nods slowly, the way the steward nodded, filing it, and says, well then, Cedar Ford has been in better hands than it paid for. But here's the hinge of this chapter, friend, and it is not Henry's hinge. It is the doctor's, and it is the hinge his whole life turns on about twice a month, because there is not one call on him tonight. There are 3, the station keeper lays them out, apologetic, as a man dealing bad cards. There is the note from Cedar Ford. A boy with fever, 40 miles north and west of this table. There is word come up the line at dusk from Deer Creek Station. A woman in labor since yesterday morning. Her 2nd child. The first birth went hard. That is 30 miles east. And there is the cattle camp on the South Fork, where a drover was thrown, and his thigh may be broken. That word is 2 days stale already. 25 miles the other direction. 1 man, 1 horse, 3 roads, and the night going on around the lamps, as if nothing at all were being weighed at that plank table. Watch him do it. Because this is a kind of doctoring the schools never taught, and no instrument in the bag performs it. He asks the stage men about Deer Creek, and learns the answer he wants. There is a midwife of good repute at the next station down, a Mrs. Reyes, and the word at dusk said she was sent for, and likely there by now, a hard birth with an experienced midwife in the room. He says, half to himself, is a fight already being fought by the right soldier. My riding 30 miles to stand behind her helps nobody but my conscience. Then the drover, a broken thigh, badly needs me, he says, and it needed me 2 days ago. And here is the cold arithmetic of a thigh. If it is broken bad, the man's fate was mostly settled in the first hours. and if it is broken, clean, and splintered by his fellows, then he is in pain. But he keeps. Pain waits. It is cruel to say, and it is true. Fever in a child does not wait. Fever in a child is a house fire. He looks at the 4 words on the table one more time. The boy is worsening. North, he says, and puts his spectacles back on. And the decision is over. And no one in the room ever hears him mention it again. He sleeps 3 hours on the station floor with his boots on, because he is a man who can order sleep like a dose and take it. You sleep none, and he knows it and lets you be. And at 3 in the morning, under a sky beginning to lean toward gray in the east, the 2 of you ride out of Willow Creek Yard together. The doctor on his big raw-boned bay, the black bag riding behind his saddle, where other men carry their bedrolls. 2 riders now, and a black bag between them. And behind them, in the lamplit doorway, a stage man with 11 fresh stitches stood holding his slung hand against his chest, and raised the good one, and held it up until the dark took them both. You learn a man differently riding beside him than any other way, and by the time the sun is well up, you have learned the shape of Dr. Marsh's silences, which is most of what he is made of. And you have learned that his horse is named General, ironically, and that he sits the saddle like a sack of grain and covers country anyway. At mid-morning he halts you at a creek crossing, on the grounds that General has earned a blow and the buckskin has earned a week. And while the horses stand fetlock deep and drink, he swings the black bag down onto a flat stone in the shade, and opens it, and begins going through it with a rag and an eye, the housekeeping of his trade, done at every pause, the way a teamster walks his wheels. And you, Henry Toole, 19 years old, 3 days out from a town that owns not one item of what is in that bag. You edge over and look in, and he sees you looking, and instead of closing it, he does a thing you will be grateful for the rest of your life. He starts handing you the trade, piece by piece, the way Hale, men, everywhere hand a green boy the ropes. This, he says, is the one that changed the world in my own working lifetime. And he holds up a squat brown glass bottle, stoppered and sealed with wax over the stopper. And he handles it, you notice, differently from everything else. 2 fingers and a thumb, like a man handling a wasp. Chloroform, he says. You will have heard of ether. Same family of mercy. Different member. A cloth folded into a cone. A phlegm, held so the patient breathes it. And a man can be somewhere else entirely while I take a crushed finger off his hand and come back knowing nothing about it. He looks at the bottle a moment. I began my practice before this existed, he says, and his voice does not change, but something behind it does. I have had strong men held down on tables by their own sons. If the age I worked in has given the world one thing worth keeping, it is this bottle. Then why do you hold it like a wasp? You ask. Because you are 19, and you ask, because the mercy is in the counting. He says, sleep is measured in drops. Boy, and the difference between enough and too many is smaller than the difference in any other bottle I carry. And it changes with the size of the patient and the state of his heart. And There is no man alive who can tell you the line exact. He seats the bottle back into its nest of wool. So I count drops the way your Mrs. Cole counted houses, he says, and I never once let the counting bore me. Boredom, in my trade, is the deadliest thing in the bag. The instruments come out next, rolled in green baize, and he unrolls them in the shade, and the sun off the creek finds them anyway. Scalpels, too, in a case, forceps, a probe, needles, curved and straight, and silk, a slim saw with a replaceable blade, and he sees your eyes stop on the saw. Every eye stops on the saw, and he neither hides it nor dwells on it, for when a limb is ruined past saving and the ruin will spread, he says, 4 times in 30 years, I remember all 4 names. And he goes on with the rag, wiping each blade bright. And here, friend, listen close over his shoulder, because in this next minute, the whole tragedy and coming glory of his century is going to pass through this man's hands without his knowing it. You keep them awful clean, you say, watching him polish steel that already shines. Habit and pride, he says. My old preceptor beat it into me. A dull or dirty blade is a disgrace to the hand that holds it. Cleanliness is seemly, and a seemly instrument works truer. That is the whole of his reason. That is the whole of the reason anywhere in 1860. He wipes those blades for the same cause. A good carpenter wipes his chisels for the honor of the trade, and no other. Nobody has told him, nobody has told anyone on this continent, that on those bright surfaces, in a scratch too fine to see, there can live something that kills the cleanest wound. The men who will prove it are at their benches across the ocean this very morning, and their proof is years off yet. And between this creek and that proof stands a war that will teach the lesson in the hardest school there is. Dr. Marsh polishes his scalpels out of pride, and pride, by pure blind luck, is half a right answer. He will die an old man just as the true answer arrives, and he will read of it in a journal by lamplight, and he will sit very still for a long while, doing what honest men of his trade did that year, counting backward through 30 years of faces. But that is ahead. This morning there is only the creek, and the rag, and the last layer of the bag, the bottles. And this is where you ask the question that opens him up like the baize roll. What works? You ask. Of all of it, what truly works? He is quiet long enough that you think he is not heard. He racks the little bottles one by one back into their loops. Morphine, that works, he says, works on pain like water on fire, and I bless it, and I have seen men come to need it worse than they needed the leg it was given for. So, it works 2 ways. Like most blessings, keen in, and he taps the oilskin packet you carry. That works. On the ague fevers. Works like an answer works. The chloroform, you know. And then he holds up a heavy little vial of bluish pills, and a folding case with a thin blade in it, and his voice goes flatter. The voice of a man handling his own doubts. Chalomel, he says. Mercury. I was taught it was the sheet anchor of the whole practice, and I have given it by the ton. and I have watched it strip the mouths and loosen the teeth of people I was sworn to help. And these last years I carry it, and I find I reach for it less and less. And this, the folding blade, is a lancet for bleeding. My preceptor bled everything. Fevers, fits, childbed, grief. I was raised to it same as you were raised to your prayers. He turns the lancet once in the light and folds it away. I have not opened a vein in 4 years, he says, and no patient of mine has been the worse for the abstaining. And I will let you do your own arithmetic on what that says about the 30 years before. And then Nathaniel Marsh, sitting on a stone in the shade, with his whole profession spread on a square of green cloth, says the truest thing any man of his age and trade ever said. And he says it to a livery boy at a nameless creek, because there is no one else in the world to say it to. Half of what is in this bag helps. He says, I have stopped being sure which half. The men who taught me were sure, God rest them, sure of the mercury, sure of the lancet, sure of everything. And I have spent my 30 years burying pieces of their certainty one at a time. What is left, when the certainty is gone? And he nods at the bag, at the horses, at the road north, his showing up, and counting honest, and doing no harm you can help, and staying by the bed. It is less than they promised me at the college. It is more than most sick folks ever get. He rolls the baize, buckles the bag, and stands, joints cracking, an aging man on an errand of mercy in the exact middle of nowhere. Mount up, he says. Your fence rail of a horse has one more day in him if you keep talking to him. And I would hear about this town of yours as we ride. The woman who counts, the smith who builds fences for legs, tell it all. It makes the miles go. So you ride north through the long afternoon, telling him Cedar Ford, chapter by chapter, everything this story has told you. And he listens the way he stitches, without hurry, asking his small questions. And the country rolls away under the horses, one swell at a time. There is a saying that was already old in 1860. Friend, and you may have felt it circling this chapter. Sometimes the most frightening question on the frontier was not whether a doctor would come. It was what he would do when he arrived. It was true. And this story does not soften it. There were bags on this prairie, holding mercury enough to ruin a family, and lancets that opened veins for every complaint under heaven, carried by sure and certain men. But it happens, by the grace of whatever watches over small towns, that the bag riding north tonight belongs to a man who buried his certainty years ago and kept only the parts that answered. And if you had to be a sick boy in Kansas Territory in 1860, with one doctor in all the grass between you and the sky, this tired, doubting, honest one on the raw-boned bay is the one you would choose. Evening comes down, slow and enormous. Red in the west, the second evening of their riding together. And somewhere in the last light, Dr. Marsh lifts his chin at the horizon ahead and asks, how far now? And you stand in your stirrups and read the country. The creek line, the far swells, the shape of home coming up out of the land. And you say, by midnight, if the moon is kind, and you think, though you do not say it, that somewhere under that darkening edge of the world, a lamp would be coming on about now, set close against the glass, turned up full, burning for the boy, burning for the town, burning, though she could not know it, for two riders and a black bag, coming north through the dark at a long trot, closer with every swell. Every long trouble has one night that the people who lived it will afterward simply call the night. And for Cedar Ford, it is this one, the fifth night, and I will tell it to you the way the town remembers it, in two places at once, because that is how it happened. Friend, all night long there was the town, and there was the road, and neither one knew how the other was faring, and the whole of this story rides on both. In town, the trouble chooses sundown to turn. Eli Weaver, who asked at dawn if it was Saturday, who kept broth down at noon, whose mother let herself believe for one whole golden afternoon, spikes at dusk like a fire finding a draught. It happens fast. Widow Whitfield sees it first, the flush climbing his neck, and by full dark he is hotter than he has been on any night of the 5, talking to the calves again, and the day's hope makes the night's fear crueler, the way a false thaw makes a frost bite deeper. Ruth Cole stands at the foot of the loft with her hand on the ladder, and she knows this pattern too, and this one she hates. Some fevers make one last climb before they break for good, and some make one last climb because they are winning. The two look alike for hours, and there is nothing in her basket, nothing in the territory, that can tell her tonight which one she is looking at, and she cannot stand here and wait to learn, because the north end is drowning. At the Kessler house, the flux has done its worst arithmetic on the smallest body. Carl and his wife are past the dangerous days, weak as string but mending. It is the youngest girl now, 4 years old, purged hollow, too weak to cry properly, and thirst is killing her by the spoonful, which means she must be saved by the spoonful, and that is a battle measured in hours of somebody's steady hands. So Ruth Cole stands in the dark street between the two lit ends of town and makes the decision this night demands of her, the kind that has no good answer, only a placed one. She cannot be two women. She sets Widow Whitfield and Mary over the boy. Cool cloths, willow tea, if he will take it. Call me if the breathing changes. And she takes herself north to the Kessler girl, because the boy has strength banked and the girl has none, and generalship is choosing where you stand while things you love are happening somewhere else. On the road, the moon comes up on two riders, making the best time 3 worn horses' worth of legs can make. Dr. Marsh rides loose and grim, and Henry Tull rides the map in his head, calling the country before it comes, the burned patch, the far glow of nothing where the flats begin. Midnight, he had promised. If the moon was kind, the moon is kind. It is the ground that betrays them. In town, at the Kessler house, Ruth fights her spoonful war. Boiled water, a pinch of salt, a pinch of the dear white sugar, the receipt her mother used in the cholera year, and a tin spoon that holds almost nothing, which is exactly as much as the child can take. A spoonful, and wait, a spoonful And wait. The girl's lips are cracked, and her eyes have gone too large for her face. And somewhere past 10 she stops swallowing well, the water sitting in her mouth. And Ruth Cole reaches then for the bottle she reaches for last. The laudanum. Because the cramping is burning the child's last strength, and opium is the one thing in the basket that truly stills a raging gut. It is also the thing with no line marked on it. And the child is 4, and small for it. Ruth holds the bottle to the lamp a long moment. Then she doses by the drop, counting 1, 2, 3, and stops, the way a man 40 miles south of her counts his chloroform, though neither will ever know of the other's counting. When the choice is between a guess and nothing, she says to Karl Kessler, who is watching from the doorway wrapped in his blanket, you guess with both hands, and you stay to watch what your guess does. That is the whole difference, Karl, between medicine and hope. On the road, in the bottom of a dry wash 11 miles out, the buckskin goes wrong. No hole, no stumble, just the heat that has been building in the near foreleg these 2 days declaring itself at last. And the horse drops to a hobbling walk, and Henry is off him before Marsh can speak. Hands running down the leg, and the leg is not broken. It is strained and swollen and finished. And the horse stands with his head down, blowing, done, honest to the last mile he had. 11 miles out, Marsh looks at the boy and the horse in the moonlight and starts to say the sensible thing. We walk them in 3 hours. And Henry Tull is already stripping his saddle. Leave it, he says. Leave everything. And he takes the buckskin's lead in his hand, and he begins to run, not a sprint. Friend, the long trot of a farm boy who has run fence lines all his life, beside a limping horse, down a moonlit freight trace. And Dr. Marsh, 55 years old, says one word to General and rides beside him at a walk-trot walk, and does not tell him to stop, because in 30 years on these roads he has learned exactly which kinds of foolishness to respect. In town, at the Weaver house, comes the moment the town will tell quietest afterward. Susan Weaver wakes on her parents' bed near midnight, alone, the house strange around her, and comes barefoot to the big room and stops. The window is dark. The lamp that has burned 5 nights. The lamp that means someone is awake. Someone is watching. The lamp that has stood between her and the whole meaning of the dark is out, and every terrible thing a 6-year-old cannot name stands up at once in her chest, and she cannot even make a sound. And then the small flame swims up again behind the glass chimney, and there is her mother's face above it, tired and whole, trimming the wick she had shaded with her hand to refill the oil. And Mary sees her daughter's face and understands the whole of it in one heartbeat, and gathers her up. Oil can still in one hand. It went low, she says into her hair. I was only feeding it. Lamps get fed. Same as you. It never went out. Susan, it will not go out. On the road. Mile 8. Milenine. Henry's breath is tearing, and the world has narrowed to the pale ribbon of the trace. And then General throws up his head and Marsh says, easy. Listen. And away off the night wind brings it, thin and impossible. A dog barking, The edge of the town's hearing them before they can see it. Milatan, and there is the creek line, black against the grass. And then they lift over the last long swell, and Henry Toll stops dead in the road, with the lead rope in his hand and his chest heaving, and looks, because there it is, below them, not one lamp, six small flames scattered down the dark shape of the town. The Weaver window, the Kessler window, the Albrecht window, the store, and two more he cannot name. The whole of Cedar Ford strung with its watchlights like riding lights on a dark sea. The town awake, the town holding, the town still there. And in town? On the porch, he has stepped out to, because the loft was more than he could bear for a minute. Thomas Weaver hears it come up the south road out of the dark. Woof beats. Two horses, one striding, one wrong-footed and slow, and under them, unmistakable, the sound of a man running. The town heard them the way dry ground hears rain. What does the arrival of a doctor look like? Friend, after 5 days and nights of doing without one, the town could be forgiven for expecting something like rescue. What it gets, and what I want you to watch closely, because it is the quiet point of this whole story, is something better and smaller. It gets a tired man who knows how to listen. Nathaniel Marsh comes up the Weaver dooryard a little past 1 in the morning, stiff from the saddle, bag in hand, and Mary Weaver meets him at the door with the lamp. And behind her, Ruth Cole is coming down the street from the Kessler end at her flat ferryman's walk, sent for by the Albrecht boy at the first sound of hooves. And here is the first thing the doctor does in Cedar Ford. He does not go to the patient. He stops in the doorway, sets down the bag, and says to the old woman with the basket, "You will be Mrs. Cole. Tell me the case from the first morning, everything, in order, and take your time, because 10 minutes of your telling is worth an hour of my poking at a sleeping boy." And Ruth Cole, who has carried this town on her counting for 5 days, with no soul above her to hand any of it to, stands in the doorway and gives her report, day by day. The first fever and the stiff neck, the willow bark, what stayed down and what did not, the false mending and the spike at dusk tonight, easing now these 2 hours, sweating again, the other trouble, the well, the counting, the houses, the chain, the girl at the north end, and 3 drops of laudanum at 10 o'clock, and the water taken by the spoon since. It takes her a quarter of an hour, and Marsh stands with his eyes closed part of the time, building the case in his head. And when she finishes, he is quiet a moment, and then he says the words that Ruth Cole will keep, privately, in the place where a woman keeps the wages nobody ever paid her. "Madame," he says, "I have heard hospital physicians present a case worse." Then he goes up the ladder, and the town, in the persons of 6 people crowded into a kitchen, holds its lamp and waits. And the examination, when you watch it, is Ruth's examination, only deeper down the same road. The pulse against a real watch instead of a hymn, the ear against the boy's chest, front and back, a long time, the belly pressed soft, quarter by quarter, watching the sleeping face for a wince, the neck lifted slow, and it bends now. The boy grumbling in his sleep like any boy, and Marsh's face does what Ruth's face did 5 nights ago. Nothing at all. Only, this time, nothing is the good news. He looks at the tongue by lamplight. He looks a long moment at the small, fine sweat on the hairline, and then he comes down the ladder and gives the town its verdict. And friend, mark how careful the honest men of that age were, because he does not name the disease. He cannot. No man alive in 1860 could. Not surely. And unlike lesser men, he will not pretend. Boys his age throw fevers of a dozen kinds, he says, and some wear a stiff neck for a few days and shed it. As this one is shedding his, I will not christen it. I will tell you what matters. The chest is clear, the belly is soft, the neck is loosing, and he is sweating free. And a fever that sweats and sleeps at the end of its 5th day is a fever on its way out the door. He is not safe yet. He is past the worst. And, he says, and here he looks around the kitchen at all of them. He is past it because he was nursed past it. Cool water, willow bark, clean linen, boiled water, and somebody awake beside him every hour of 5 nights. You did not need me for this, boy. You needed me to tell you that you did not need me. And that, friends, is most of my practice. And I made my peace with it years ago. He unwraps the fort's quinine and reads the steward's dosing paper and nods over it. Army neat, he says. And he halves the dose for the boy's size and shows Ruth the halving. And it is 2 tradesmen at a bench now, her basket open on the table beside his bag. The wild bark and the refined salt of the same tree family lying 6 inches apart in the lamplight. 80 years of practice between the two of them, and not 1 minute of schooling shared. Then he takes up his bag and goes north, up the dark street to the Kessler end, because the report he heard in the doorway has him more worried for the girl of 4 than for the boy of 8. And he is right to be. He is 2 days too late for one soul in that house, and no earthly speed could have mended it. Carl Kessler's mother, who came from the old country with them, who was 81, and failing before the water ever turned, had nothing left to fight the flux with. And she slipped away in the gray of that morning with her son's hand in hers and Ruth Cole's hand on her forehead. Quiet, at the end of a long life, in a clean bed, among her own, the first death of this story. Friend, and the only one, and I will not look away from it, and I will not linger on it either, because the town did neither. What the town did, you could set your clock by. The women came at first light with food nobody asked for. Delia Finch walked up from the store with the best linen off her own shelf and would not write it in either ledger. And at 10 in the morning, because Cedar Ford has no bell to toll, Gideon Pratt stood at his anvil and struck it 3 times. Slow, with the flat of the great hammer, 3 round iron notes with silence between them. And up and down the street, men took off their hats in their own doorways. And that was the passing bell of Cedar Ford. Iron for bronze. And no cathedral ever rang a truer one. And the girl of 4 lives? I will say it plainly here, so you carry no dread forward, because the town needed the knowing of it that morning, the way you need it now. Marsh sits the day beside her, spelling Ruth spoonful for spoonful, and by evening the child keeps down more than she loses, and her eyes come back to the size of a child's eyes. And the flux, having taken the oldest, loosens its grip on the youngest, the way that sickness does when clean water starves it. You're chained well, Marsh tells Karl Kessler, was the turning of it. I have seen towns bury a dozen for want of that chain. I cannot tell you why the water does it any more than your missus. Coal can. I can tell you, I have seen it before. And that her counting saved this street. And when the fools and the wise argue it in years to come, you may say, a doctor stood in your house and said so. That evening, the sixth evening, something shifts in Cedar Ford. Small as a wind change and just as real. The lamps still burn. 3 now instead of 6. But the town's shoulders have come down, and folks stand talking in the street at dusk, the way they have not stood all week. And from the smithy, at the supper hour, comes the sound of the anvil ringing true on ordinary work. And at the Weaver house occurs the final event of this long day. And I would not have you miss it. Ruth Cole, giving Mary the night's instructions, is stopped in the middle of them by Dr. Marsh, who has come up the street with his bag to look in on the boy, and who now sets the bag down and addresses the old woman with great formality. Mrs. Cole, he says, I am given to understand you have slept 11 hours in 6 days. I am the attending physician in this town tonight, the first it has ever had, and I intend to enjoy the office. Widow Whitfield has the boy. I have the girl. You, madam, are my patient now, and my prescription is written. He points up the street toward her little house at the end of it. Bed. Till you wake on your own, and not 1 minute sooner. Go, or I will have the blacksmith carry you. And I believe he would enjoy it. And Ruth Cole, 63 years old, opens her mouth to argue, and finds the whole street watching her with something in their faces she has spent 40 years putting into her own, and closes it again, and goes. And the town watched her down the street, and somebody, nobody ever owned to it, went ahead and lit the lamp in her window for her, so that hers was one of the 3 that burned that night. For the first night in 6, the town kept watch over its watcher. She slept 14 hours, and the prairie wind walked around her little house all night, and the lamp burned in her window till morning, saying the old thing to the empty street. Someone is resting here. Someone is watched over. All is well enough. Tonight, in Cedar Ford, sleep on. The 7th day is a Sunday, and there is no preacher within 2 towns of Cedar Ford. So, the town does what it always does on the empty Sundays. It rests inside its own morning, and lets the week settle. And this is the hour, friend, while the coffee smoke climbs from 30 chimneys, and the boy sleeps easy at last, for you and me to walk the quiet street together and settle the accounts of this story. Every story like this one owes a reckoning at the end, and I mean to pay it honestly. The good coin and the hard coin both begin at the widow's boarding house, where Dr. Marsh is taking his breakfast, because the first account is his, and it is written in a currency you should see. He rode better than 70 miles to this town, lost 2 nights of sleep, sat a full day spooning water into a child of 4, and this morning the town settles its bill. Thomas Weaver brings what a farmer has in October, and what he has is a shoat, a good young pig, trussed and indignant in the bed of the wagon, and $11 in coin that you may be sure did not come easily out of the coffee tin above the stove. Karl Kessler, who has buried his mother this week and watched his daughter come back from the edge, comes to the boarding house porch and tries to give the doctor the deed value of a corner of his quarter section, and is refused, and stands there with his hat in his hands. A proud man, with nothing the doctor will take, until Marsh looks up from his plate and says, "Your well was stoned by a careful man. I saw the work. Come spring, you will dig me a new one at the Deer Creek station where the water is foul, and we are square." And that is how they leave it. A well for a daughter. Next spring, 30 miles from here, and both men entirely satisfied. And if you want to know how medicine was truly paid for on the American frontier, there it is, on one porch, in one morning. A pig, $11, and a well to be dug next spring, and the widow Kessler, the old woman, what of her account? Marsh had looked at it straight the evening before, with Carl, because Carl needed it looked at straight. 2 days sooner would not have turned it, he said, nor would a hospital in St. Louis. If you could have carried her there on a feather bed, 81 years, and the flux on top of them is a sum. Carl, and sums do not argue. She did not die for want of a doctor. She died at the end of a long life with her hand held, and half the world's kings have done worse. Hard coin, friend, but honest, and Karl Kessler slept that night, which was the prescription's whole purpose. Now walk up the street to the second account, the one that has no page anywhere, and never did. Ruth Cole is sitting on her own doorstep in the Sunday sun, shelling the last beans of the year into a pan. 14 hours of sleep behind her and her basket. For one whole morning, standing idle inside the door. Look at her a moment, because the ledgers of this age will not. Where is her fee? Where is her diploma? Her title? Her name in a county record? In 40 years, she has delivered better than 200 children, 3 of them in this one town, this one year. She has set fevers to rights past counting, sat more deathbeds than the circuit preacher. And this week, she read a poisoned well out of 6 sick households by arithmetic alone, and there is not one document on this earth with her name on it, except a marriage line twice, and someday a stone, of age, this morning, are on her doorstep, a crock of Mrs. Albrecht's butter, a smoked ham hock from the Hollis place, somebody's jar of wild plum preserves with a cloth tied over it, set there in the night without a word. That is the fee, and the pantry of every healing woman on this frontier is paid in exactly this coin, butter and ham and plum preserves, and standing, that last being the true one, the standing, the way the street straightens a little when she passes, the way grown men take questions to her doorstep with their hats off, and her learning, where did that come from? Since no college door ever opened for her. You know the answer. Friend, you have watched it all week. It came in baskets. Her mother's basket, and behind that her grandmother's. England, and the boat, and the long roads, and braided into it, never to be picked apart now, the basket of Sarah Blue Jacket, the Shawnee woman on the Ohio bottomlands, whose people had been reading fevers and dressing wounds on this continent for 10,000 years before the first ship, and who traded craft with a white neighbor woman across a kitchen table for the plain reason that both took the work seriously. What Ruth carries is not one tradition. It is a river with many springs. Women's knowledge, and native knowledge, and old country knowledge, moving west basket by basket, kitchen by kitchen, unwritten, unpaid, and holding up more of this country than the country will ever know to say thank you for. There is a third account, and it is the hardest, and I will pay it the way the town paid its others, plainly and without flinching, because this story owes it. The lamp in the window, the neighbors at the door, the town closing around it sick like a hand around a flame. All of it true, and all of it in this year of 1860. A mercy that stopped at certain lines. Cedar Ford closed around the Kesslers. North End for South End. German name and all. And that is to its honor. But be honest about the age. Friend, in this same October, in other territories and other states, there are settlements where a sick stranger's wagon is turned away for the fever in it. There are camps in the goldfields where a man of the wrong country or the wrong color doctors himself alone in a tent at the edge of everything. And south and east of this prairie, this very night, there are 4 million souls held in bondage, and among them mothers sitting up with burning children by exactly this kind of lamplight, with all the same skill and twice the burden, whose sick are entered in a planter's account book on the same pages as the mules. The lamp is the best thing in this story. It is the best thing in most stories. And in 1860, who the lamp burned for still depended, too often, on who you were. And no love of these old towns is honest. That will not say so out loud. Once, before the story sleeps, and one account more, the last, and then we will go back down the street to where the boy is waking. This one is ode to the future, and it is the strangest of all, because we can read it, and not one soul in Cedar Ford can stand in the Sunday street a moment and know what they cannot. 6 months from this morning, the guns open on a fort in Charleston Harbor, and the war comes, and it will reach even here, and take some of the young men of this county into places this story will not follow. And that war, among all its terrible works, will do one strange, merciful thing. It will teach this country's doctors, in 4 years and in the hardest school ever built, more about wounds and fevers and clean water and the arithmetic of camps than the 40 years before it managed to teach. And behind the war, further off, the answer itself is coming. In rooms across the ocean, men are already at the benches, and inside a generation they will prove what Ruth Cole's counting and her boiled kettle were reaching toward all along, the unseen life in the water and the womb. and medicine will stop guessing and begin to know. Dr. Marsh will live just long enough to read of it. An old man by a lamp, and he will sit still a long while with the journal open on his knees. And then, they say, of the honest ones of that generation, he will do what all his tribe did that year. He will count backward, name by name, through 30 years of faces, and get up the next morning and go on doctoring by the new lights. Because that was ever the best of that breed. They buried their certainties and kept their patience. But all of that, friend, the war and the microscopes and the whole roaring century waiting over the eastern horizon, all of that is the future. And the future does not live here yet. In Cedar Ford it is simply Sunday. The bean pods snap on Ruth Cole's doorstep. The shote complains in Marsh's borrowed pen behind the boarding house. And down at the west end of the street, in a house with a lamp gone quiet in the window, a boy of 8 has just wakened, clear-eyed at last, and is asking, in a voice cranky with health, whether a man can get any breakfast around here. We will end this story the way the week ended. Friend, slowly, and in the morning, with nobody saving anybody. Because the saving was already done, and it was done by everyone. You are Henry Toe, one last time. You wake on your bedroll in the livery loft with the sun already through the cracks. Having slept like the dead man you nearly ran yourself into, and your first thought is the buckskin. You find him in the end stall, where somebody has already been before you. The strained foreleg is poulticed and wrapped in clean sacking, neat as a splinted arm, and there is fresh hay down, and the somebody is still there, a great, quiet shape in the stall doorway, and it is Gideon Pratt, come on a Sunday morning to doctor a horse that carried a message for the town. He will stand sound, Gideon says. 6 weeks of rest. He earned them. And then the blacksmith looks at you a while, the way he looked at the buckskin shoes a week ago, checking the make of a thing, and he says the most words you have ever heard him say at one stretch. I had a boy once to help at the forge, he says. Went to the goldfields 2 years back. The work is heavy, and the pay is regular, and a town this size needs more hands that can mend things. Come Monday, if you want it, and he goes out, because everything needful has now been said, and you stand in the stall with your hand on the buckskin's neck, 19 years old, 6 days older than you were, and you find that the sentence has changed something in the shape of the world. Half a year you have been in this town without being of it. It took a fever, a well, and 70 miles of dark grass. But the town has read you now, the way it reads windows and anvils, and what it read. It wants, you came over the rise last spring, a stranger with a bedroll. On Monday, you will be the blacksmith's boy, which in a town like this is a name and a place and a beginning. Down the street, Dr. Marsh is loading his bag behind General's saddle, and the town is seeing him off in its sideways fashion. Folks finding reasons to be out front of their houses along his line of ride. He stops at the Weaver place, where Eli, wrapped in a quilt against all his protests, is installed on the porch in the morning sun like a small convalescent king, and the doctor's whole examination, this last one, is to look at the boy eating fried mush at a rate no dying child ever ate, and to tell Mary, gravely, that the case is now beyond his powers, for medicine has no remedy against a boy who is going to be hungry like that clear till Christmas. He leaves the quinine papers with Ruth Cole, and the halved doses, written plain, and the two of them stand a moment at the gate, the diploma and the basket, and what passes between them is short, and it is everything. "You know where I ride," he says. "The stage road, station, to station, any month of the year. Send that fence rail of a boy if you are ever past your depth." And Ruth Cole says, "And you do the same, doctor, for I have 40 years of receipts, and you have a saw. And between us, we nearly make one whole physician." And Nathaniel Marsh laughs his one short laugh, and mounts, and rides south out of Cedar Ford, with the Choate Trust and grumbling behind his saddle. A tired man with a good horse and half a science, going back to his 30 miles of stations. And the town watches him small and smaller down the south road. And he was never the hero of this story, friend, and he never once asked to be. And that is precisely why he deserves the touch of the hat the men give him as he passes. And now there is only one thing left to happen, and it happens quietly, at the west end of the street. And I saved it for you. Mid-morning, full sun, the prairie wind combing the grass all the way to the sky. Mary Weaver comes out onto her porch and stands a moment. Then she reaches through the open window, and she cups her hand behind the lamp chimney, the lamp that has burned 6 nights and 7 days, that burned while a rider crossed the dark, and a well was chained, and an old woman was let go, and a girl of 4 was pulled back, spoonful by spoonful, and she blows it out. That is all. A woman blowing out a lamp on a sunny morning. But Susan is watching from the yard, and Susan understands it the way children understand the true weight of small things. And she goes off down the street at a run to tell everyone she meets. The lamp is out at our house. The lamp is out, and folks straighten up from their Sunday chores one after another to hear it. And there is not one soul in Cedar Ford who needs it explained. The window is dark because the danger is over. The light is out because the watching is done. No church bell in any country ever said it better. That evening, the last of this story, the town gathers itself in 2s and 3s on its porches, the way it does when the weather turns fine. And at the Weaver place, the story is already being told. Susan demands it, sitting on the steps. Tell about Henry, riding to the fort in the dark, and Henry, present and mortified, and secretly pleased to the bone, submits to being narrated, and Thomas tells it plain, and Widow Whitfield corrects him where plainness fails. And the tale is already growing, the small shine that tales grow, the lone tree taller, the night darker, the fort farther, and let it grow. Friend, let it grow, because that is the last medicine this story has to show you. And it is a real one. A town turns its terrors into stories on its porches, and the stories knit the town the way bone knits, stronger along the healed line, and children who hear them learn, without ever being taught, that when trouble comes, somebody rides, somebody counts, somebody sits up, and the lamp gets lit. Susan Weaver will tell this week to her grandchildren in another century, on a porch not yet built, in a Kansas not yet a state. And that telling is the town's true immunity, passed down like Ruth's basket, hand to hand. Pull back with me now, one last time, up and away from the porches, into the enormous purple evening, until Cedar Ford is small below us. 30 chimneys sending up their supper smoke on the darkening grass. There was no miracle here this week. Count it over and see. A boy's fever ran its course, as most fevers mercifully do, helped by willow bark, cool water, and 5 nights of hands that never stop. A poisoned well was found, not by science, but by an old woman counting on her fingers in a church. And the counting was enough. An axe wound healed clean because it was washed with boiled water and whiskey by people obeying their grandmothers. A doctor came on the 6th day, and his greatest service was the truth. And one old soul went out of the world gently, hand in hand, which is not a failure. Friend, that is how the story of every life ends, when it ends at its right time among its own. And a town that can give its people that has given them something. Hospitals are still trying to learn to give across this whole continent tonight. In this year of 1860, it is the same. Out beyond the reach of the cities, in 10,000 settlements, scattered from the Ohio to the far Pacific, there is no doctor down the street, and there will not be one for years yet. And the people are not helpless, and they never were. They have the box beneath the bed and the book beside the Bible. They have the woman with the basket, and the smith with the steady hands, and the storekeeper with the second ledger, and the neighbor who takes the midnight watch, and the boy who will ride. Medicine, in those places, is rarely a building, and it is not yet a profession. It is a chair pulled up to a bedside. It is a lamp set close against the window glass, burning its small, stubborn answer out into all that darkness, saying, somebody is awake, somebody is watching. Sleep on, sleep on. The lamp is out at the Weaver place now, traveler, and the street is dark. And the dark tonight is the good kind, the kind that means everyone is only sleeping. Ruth Cole sleeps with her basket by the door and her boots where her feet can find them. The buckskin sleeps standing, wrapped leg and all. Hay, smell, and moonlight, way off south at some swing station. A tired doctor sleeps with his spectacles folded in his boot. And, at the fort, a strip of red calico waits patiently on a gatepost for a surgeon who will ride in Tuesday and come straight away, and find the town already mended, and stay to supper anyway. And in a loft at the west end of town, a boy is asleep with his sister across the room, deep in the kind of sleep that builds boys back. And no one is sitting up tonight, because no one needs to. And that, after this week, is the sweetest sentence this town knows how to say. Let it be yours too. Now, the watch is ended. The town is well. Somebody would sit up for you, friend, if the night ever asked it. Somebody always has. Blow out your lamp. Sleep now. Sweet dreams.